We have a neighbor that we cannot awake.
What if the person you thought was safe in their own home became the target of a calculated predator? This was the terrifying reality for 91-year-old Mary Bartell.
We rest her place. Is she breathing? We can't wake her up. It's on the way, okay?
On that fateful morning of March 19th, as she sat at her computer writing an email to her children, a stranger forced his way into her life, bringing with him a darkness that would change everything. What did Mary witness in those horrifying moments? How did her remarkable bravery turn her into a key figure in the hunt for a suspected serial killer? Stay with us as we unravel a disturbing tale of survival, resilience, and the fight for justice. Mary Bartell had lived a peaceful life in Dallas, Texas, for 4 years, at Preston Place, a luxury retirement community. These places are designed to offer seniors like Mary a safe, comfortable environment with the added benefit of resort-like amenities. But beneath this peaceful setting, a serial killer had been lurking, targeting the most vulnerable members of society. But what made Mary's case stand out was her courage, which finally unraveled a killer's dark spree, shaking the retirement communities that had once promised safety and peace. In the quiet, safe surroundings of a 16-acre gated community, Mary Bartell lived a life of peace and friendship. Known for its security and friendly residents, the Preston Place retirement home had always seemed like the perfect home for Mary. Married for 67 years, she deeply missed her late husband, Don, who passed away in 2015. Despite the loss, Mary stayed active, going to Mass, attending daily exercise classes, and cherishing time with her close friends and family. But on March 19, 2018, everything changed. That morning at 9:26 a.m., a 911 dispatcher received a frantic call from an elderly woman at Preston Place. It was Jackie, Mary's close friend. On her way to pick Mary up for their usual exercise class, Jackie had arrived to find something unsettling. Mary wasn't waiting outside her door like she usually did. Instead, Jackie noticed the door slightly open. Pushing it open, she stepped inside. And what she saw sent her heart racing. Mary was lying completely still on her bed, unresponsive. Jackie, in shock and panic, rushed to her friend's side, trying desperately to wake her. But Mary didn't move. Without hesitation, Jackie dialed 911, her voice trembling as she pleaded for help for her beloved friend. What had started as a normal day had taken a dark, disturbing turn. This wasn't just an accident. It was a sign of something far more sinister. The peaceful community that had always promised safety was now at the center of a horrifying mystery. It is important to note that during this time, across retirement communities in Dallas, elderly women began dying under suspicious circumstances. In total, there were over 700 cases of unattended deaths. The Dallas police initially saw each case as an isolated incident, never suspecting the presence of a serial killer. Could Mary's fall be tied to the string of deaths occurring in retirement homes across Dallas? As EMTs rushed into Mary Bartell's apartment, they checked her pulse, hoping for a chance to save her. Meanwhile, a police officer contacted Mary's son, John Bartell, delivering the shocking news. The family was overwhelmed with fear and confusion, unsure whether Mary would survive or what had caused her sudden collapse. Despite her age, Mary, at over 90, led an active life, working out regularly, maintaining a sharp wit, and staying socially connected. She had no significant medical history to suggest something like this would happen. Then something unexpected happened. Mary stirred, regaining consciousness. Slowly, she raised her hand and motioned to the police officer at her bedside. Her gesture was subtle but significant. She pointed to her finger. Her wedding ring was gone. This small detail was shocking. According to her son, John, Mary never removed that ring. She wore it everywhere, while sleeping, bathing, and during her daily activities. If the ring was missing, something was terribly wrong. The EMTs and police began to realize this wasn't just a medical emergency. It was a sign that Mary had been targeted. The missing wedding ring was a critical clue, indicating that this was no accident. Could it be connected to the unsettling rise in suspicious deaths among elderly women across the Dallas area? As the mystery deepened, it became clear that Mary's life and the lives of others were entangled in something far more sinister than anyone had imagined. Now Mary and Don were the ideal high school sweethearts, and their love story was like something straight out of a movie. To their children and grandchildren, their bond seemed destined to last forever. Since Don's passing a few years earlier, Mary clung tightly to the memories they shared, especially her wedding ring, which she never took off. When John Bartell, Mary's son, and the family learned that her ring was missing, alarm bells went off. This wasn't like her. They searched her apartment high and low, hoping to find the cherished piece of jewelry. But not only was the ring missing, all of her valuable jewelry had vanished too. That's when Sergeant Brian France began to recall something chillingly familiar. He remembered a bulletin from Officer Chapman about thefts involving deceased elderly women. Over the years, hundreds of elderly women had passed away, some under questionable circumstances, and many with personal belongings, especially jewelry, missing. Yet no one had ever connected these dots. France had a sudden realization. This was bigger than they thought. As Mary Bartell was rushed to the hospital, clinging to life, the investigation took a sharp turn. Mary's survival was not only crucial for her recovery, but also for unraveling a much larger and more sinister mystery. Investigators started revisiting other cases that had a haunting resemblance to Mary's, and that's when they stumbled upon the case of Helen Lee. 6 months before, in the summer of 2017, Helen Lee had experienced a similarly creepy situation. The unsettling pattern was becoming clearer, and with it, the horrifying realization that Mary's case wasn't an isolated incident, it was part of a disturbing trend that spanned years. Now, Helen Lee, 82, had been living in the Parkview, Frisco retirement community for 5 years. She had made a peaceful life there, enjoying time with her friends and frequent visits from her beloved granddaughter. Helen, a seamstress for over 45 years, found comfort in her close-knit group, including her best friend, 90-year-old Marilyn Bixler. The two women were inseparable, constantly spending time together, whether for lunch, dinner, or simply catching up. Living just floors apart in the same building, they had formed a bond that made their retirement years feel full of joy and companionship. But despite the community's reputation as a well-established and secure place for seniors, there were gaps in its security. The stairwell remained unlocked, and there were no surveillance cameras to monitor who came and went. By early September, Helen and Marilyn's routine was shattered. On Sunday, September 3rd, Helen's granddaughter grew concerned when her Grammy didn't show up for church. She went to check on her, only to find Helen lying motionless in her bedroom, her cane at her side. Law enforcement quickly assured the family that Helen had likely passed from a heart attack, a conclusion they didn't question at the time. Not long after, Marilyn Bixler was also found dead in her apartment. Both women were in their late 80s, and their deaths, though heartbreaking, weren't entirely unexpected given their age. Authorities chalked up the events to natural causes and decided not to perform autopsies, a decision that, at first glance, seemed reasonable. However, in light of what was happening with other elderly women in nearby communities, the deaths of Helen and Marilyn would soon raise more questions than answers. Were these really just natural deaths, or was something far more sinister at play? At first, no one could imagine who would want to hurt senior citizens, but something felt off to the families of Helen Lee and Marilyn Bixler. Both women were found lying perfectly straight, as if someone had carefully positioned them. Family members also noticed unusual bruises on their arms, and in one case, a pair of glasses was found twisted completely backward. Yet nothing was done. Helen's daughter recalls asking the police if they thought someone had hurt her mother. However, the response was discouraging, as they told her that her mother had died naturally and that someone had just happened to rob the jewelry off her cold, dead body. This explanation did little to ease her suspicion, especially after she realized that her mother's cherished ring, which she never removed, was missing. As similar incidents continued to surface, the local police were forced to look deeper into these unsettling events. A disturbing pattern emerged. A string of elderly women had died under similar circumstances, each one missing valuable jewelry. From wedding rings to gold necklaces, even a Rolex watch. The total worth of stolen items exceeded $500,000. The coincidence between the timing of these deaths and the disappearances of the jewelry was too alarming to ignore. With a new sense of urgency, authorities began to realize these deaths weren't just isolated incidents. They pointed to something far more sinister. As investigators looked back, They discovered that normally, Tradition Prestonwood, the retirement community where many of the women lived, experienced only about 3 deaths a year. Yet with the recent surge in fatalities, it became clear they were facing a calculated and cold-hearted predator targeting the most vulnerable. The troubling deaths of senior citizens between 2016 and 2018 quickly escalated into something far more frightening. What began as isolated incidents soon revealed a disturbing pattern: hundreds of unattended deaths, many tied to only 4 luxury senior living facilities. Jewelry theft became a glaring issue, with families realizing that their loved ones' most prized possessions had gone missing right after they passed away. The magnitude of the situation was alarming. Despite the growing number of suspicious deaths and thefts, the management of the retirement homes appeared unsympathetic. When the families asked for answers, they were met with dismissiveness, particularly from Edmundo Sanchez, the community relations director at Tradition Prestonwood. His indifferent attitude only added to the family's suspicions. When asked about the missing jewelry, his response was unsettling. "These old ladies hide stuff in their underwear drawer sometimes." This lack of concern left the families frustrated and distrustful. Taking matters into their own hands, the residents started posting warnings about the jewelry thefts, asking others to lock their doors and remain vigilant. However, their efforts were swiftly shut down by management, who claimed the posters caused unnecessary alarm. This move only deepened the sense of something being seriously wrong within these communities. The dismissive attitude and quick removal of the warnings painted a chilling picture of a place where safety and justice seemed secondary. After years of mounting complaints and suspicions, police finally began taking action in the fall of 2016. Edmundo Sanchez was brought in for questioning. His casual and cold responses only heightened suspicions. Investigators turned their attention to the retirement home's surveillance systems, only to find major gaps. At Preston Place, for instance, there were no cameras monitoring the 3rd or 4th floors, leaving many areas vulnerable to intruders. This lack of security made it far too easy for someone to slip in and out unnoticed. Sergeant Davis, growing increasingly suspicious, remarked that something felt off and that something about the situation wasn't right. However, despite pursuing every possible lead, including questioning paramedics, the investigation hit a wall. There was no physical evidence, no clear suspects, and no arrests were made. The case was effectively closed, leaving families and authorities without closure. Everything changed when Mary Bartell was rushed to the hospital after a similar incident. Her case had strange similarities to those of the past 2 years. But there was one major difference. Mary survived. Her survival could provide the crucial answers needed to finally unravel the mystery behind the disturbing deaths and thefts troubling the retirement communities. Could Mary's case be the key to solving what had evaded investigators for so long? But before we find that out, we have to know what exactly happened that day. On that seemingly uneventful Monday morning at Preston Place Retirement Home, Mary Bartell was sitting in her apartment typing an email to her children. Around 8:30 a.m., there's a knock at the door. It's nothing unusual. Mary expects it to be a neighbor or perhaps a staff member checking in on her. She rises from her desk, unlocks the door, and just as the click echoes in the quiet room, the door flies open with force. A tall man pushes his way inside, catching Mary completely off guard. She tries to slam the door shut, but his strength overpowers her. Panic floods her as she notices something chilling. He's wearing green rubber gloves. Towering over Mary, the man grabs hold of her, pushing her frail body aside effortlessly. She struggles, tries to fight him off, but at 91 years old, she's no match for his physical strength. Desperately, Mary reaches for the life alert button around her neck, her one chance at getting help. But before she can press it, the man pins her arm down, cutting off her last hope of rescue. Her world goes dark as she loses consciousness. Moments later, the silence is shattered by the sound of the door opening again. This time, it's Mary's friend, arriving to pick her up for their daily workout. Her friend, sensing the urgency of the situation, then calls 911, praying that help arrives in time. As the paramedics work swiftly, a miracle occurs. Against all odds, Mary opens her eyes. With great effort, she gasps for breath and urgently relays a detailed description of her attacker to the police. Now armed with this crucial information, detectives launch a thorough investigation, canvassing the retirement home for any potential witnesses. They quickly uncover multiple reports of a suspicious individual fitting Mary's description, seen lurking around the premises. One witness recalls seeing a man on the fourth floor, claiming he was there to check for pipe leaks. The description is precise: 5 feet 10 inches, 180 pounds, dressed in a clean suit, and carrying a satchel. Coincidentally, on the same day and time as Mary's attack, police received a call about a stranger walking around the retirement home parking lot. Concerned for the safety of the residents, the caller noted the suspicious man's license plate. When police trace the vehicle, they discover it belongs to a man named Billy Chemermere. At 46 years old, he matches Mary's description perfectly. Billy presents himself as a medical professional, at least that's what it appears to be on the surface. Security footage reveals him moving seamlessly between roles: a nurse, a plumber, a maintenance worker. He seems to blend into the fabric of the retirement community, gaining the trust of the residents while hiding a sinister agenda. The detectives now find themselves on a collision course with a suspect who could be the key to unraveling the disturbing pattern of crime that has haunted this community for far too long. Now, detectives begin to piece together the unsettling tactics employed by Billy Chemermere. He gains access to various facilities using random uniforms from his past jobs, coupled with the presence of unmanned doors, making it all too easy for him to slip in unnoticed. The police decide to take a closer look into his background and discover a pattern of suspicious behaviors. Delving into his criminal record, they find DUI charges, but the most alarming detail is that Chemermere was arrested for trespassing at a retirement home back in 2016. He had posed as a maintenance worker to gain entry into elderly residents' apartments. This raises a chilling possibility. If he is indeed a killer, he has had access to medication, keys, and the most vulnerable citizens among us. The shocking realization hits the detectives. He could potentially have over 700 victims and is still walking free. What they know is that Chemermere is difficult to catch, frequently changing his appearance, jobs, vehicles, and even identities. He moves effortlessly between 4 different retirement homes, evading capture by authorities time and again. Tasked with the difficult job of apprehending someone who seems to have mastered the art of invisibility, all police resources are now focused on finding him at any cost. A suspected serial killer is on the loose, and the clock is ticking. It's now March 20th, 2018, just one day after Mary's horrifying attack. The suspicious vehicle from the previous day pulls into a nearby Walmart, a mere 5.7 miles away from Mary's apartment. The store is equipped with security cameras that cover every corner, allowing detectives to monitor his behavior for hours. At precisely 2:30 p.m., the surveillance footage captures Billy walking through the store, seemingly calm and collected, unaware that his every move is being watched. This could be the breakthrough the police desperately need to bring him to justice. But Billy Chemermere is fixated on one person in particular, an elderly woman dressed in red. He mirrors her movements, shadowing her through the aisles of Walmart for over 20 minutes. As she casually finishes her shopping and heads back to her car, unaware of the danger lurking behind her, the man remains hot on her trail. He follows her out of the parking lot, unnoticed, expressing the terrifying reality that one could simply be going about their day and yet be stalked home by someone with malicious intent. Fast forward to 5:50 p.m., hours later on that same day, when police finally spot Billy's vehicle. According to their descriptions, the driver fits the profile perfectly. The officers begin to tail him as he enters an apartment complex, heart rates rising with the hope of finally cornering their suspect. The tension escalates when Billy stops in front of a dumpster, exits his vehicle, and casually discards something inside. While some officers continue to track him, others rush to investigate the dumpster. As they sift through the contents, they make a startling discovery: a beautiful, bright red jewelry box that appears to have been broken into. Though some valuables remain, the most significant find is an old name tag nestled inside the box, along with a document. The name reads Luty von Harris, giving the investigators a sudden wave of recognition. This isn't just any jewelry, it is potentially linked to one of Chemermere's victims, a reminder that each piece of evidence could unravel a web of crimes that spans years and hundreds of unsuspecting elderly women. The pieces of the puzzle are slowly coming together, but the hunt for justice is far from over. As police quickly search the name found in the jewelry box, they identify an 81-year-old woman living less than 2 miles away. Time is of the essence now. A decision is made swiftly to conduct a welfare check on Luthi Harris. One of the neighbors noticed the officers and asked if everything was okay. The officer responded that they were just there to check on the welfare of the lady who lived there. The neighbor reassured them that she should be fine, mentioning that he had seen her at the post office around 4:30. Despite this reassurance, the officers, trusting their instincts, decided to force entry into the residence. As they rush inside, a sinking feeling envelops them. They are too late. Tragically, they find the lifeless body of an elderly woman who matches Luthi Harris's description. The officers notify the family immediately. Luthi's granddaughter, Karen Wong, senses something is terribly wrong when her father unexpectedly picks her up from university. Karen recalled how her dad had picked her up, crying uncontrollably. He had told her that he had something important to share, and the pain in his voice mirrored the growing fear in her heart. Reflecting on her grandmother, Karen remembered how beautiful she was, always dressing up, with a smile that was childlike in its innocence. The overwhelming horror of the situation had left Karen terrified, constantly triple-checking the locks and ensuring no one was following her. Initially, Luthi Harris's apartment appears unremarkable. No signs of a break-in, no suspicious details. Yet, due to the earlier discovery of her jewelry box in the dumpster, the urgency in the search for the suspected serial killer skyrockets. Authorities realize they're dealing with someone who has not only committed robbery, but may have taken innocent lives, and the pressure mounts to stop him before he can strike again. The police, determined to bring the suspect to justice, track down Billy Kamirmir outside his apartment complex in Dallas and make the arrest. The evidence is overwhelming, linking him to the murder of Luthi Harris just an hour prior to his capture. He was then held at the Dallas County Jail, facing a capital murder charge. As he's escorted into the police station, he is placed inside an interrogation room. When confronted with the gravity of his actions, Billy fakes innocence and confusion, trying to maintain a calm behavior. However, the detective lays out undeniable proof of his guilt. In Chemirmir's apartment, investigators uncover several cell phones, rubber gloves, and even a printed passport for an alias. The police also find an alarming amount of jewelry in both his vehicle and residence, all belonging to previous victims. This evidence connects him to multiple suspicious deaths, heightening the urgency of the investigation. To build a stronger case, police reach out to local pawn shops and jewelry sellers, showing them a picture of Kamirmir in hopes of gathering additional evidence. One owner at Diamond and Gold's Exchange immediately recognizes him as a regular customer, appearing frequently on their security footage. The owner recalls that Billy would be laughing and shaking hands, noting how Kamirmir portrayed himself as a legitimate buyer and seller of jewelry, claiming to acquire items legally. As the investigation deepens, authorities discover that Kamirmir reportedly made over $100,000 selling stolen jewelry through various pawn shops, diamond stores, and even online marketplaces like eBay. However, investigators suspect this number is just the tip of the iceberg, hinting at a much larger network of crime that they are only beginning to uncover. The hunt for justice intensifies as they piece together the chilling puzzle of Kamirmir's actions and the lives he has destroyed. In April 2022, Billy Kamirmir faced a second trial for the murder of Luthi Harris. Following a mistrial in the first case, the prosecution focused on the compelling evidence against him, despite his alleged involvement in at least 18 other murders. Kamirmir pleaded not guilty, but the courtroom was filled with families of victims, deeply impacted by the case. The trial began with the powerful testimony of 91-year-old Mary Bartell, who had survived an attack by Kamirmir the day before his arrest. Her detailed account provided crucial evidence, bringing attention to the horror faced by elderly victims. On April 28, 2022, the jury convicted Kamirmir of capital murder in just 45 minutes, bringing a sense of relief to Lou Harris's family. In the following week, families of 22 victims delivered impact statements, allowing them to address Kamirmir directly. On October 7, 2022, Kamirmir was convicted again, ensuring he would never harm anyone again. After this conviction, the other charges against him were dropped, which left many victims' families feeling disappointed. But Hemmermeer's life ended on September 19th, 2023, when he was killed by his cellmate, Wyatt Busby, at the Caulfield unit in Texas. Hemmermeer was 50 years old at the time. Busby, who was serving a 50-year sentence for a 2016 murder, allegedly attacked Hemmermeer after Hemmermeer reportedly made inappropriate comments about Busby's children. For the victims' families, the road to healing remains long, but knowing Hemmermeer will never harm anyone again offers some comfort. Mary Bartell's legacy lives on, embodying courage and inspiring those who knew her. Though she passed away in 2020, her memory serves as a powerful reminder of the strength of the human spirit. How do you feel about the way justice was served in this case? What can communities do to better protect their elderly members? Leave your thoughts in the comments section below. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. Thank you for watching. We'll see you guys soon.
Is he alive? He's not? Oh, good. Oh, thank you.
What drives a mother to the brink of despair, leading her to commit an unthinkable act?
Boom, boom, boom.
In the case of Cynthia Gidabaka, the events that unfolded reveal a chilling tale of abuse, betrayal, and a desperate fight for survival. What were the hidden truths that led to that fateful moment? And could the horrors her daughter faced have been the catalyst for Cynthia's desperate actions? Stay with us as we delve deep into the heart of a case that raises more questions than answers. Cynthia Gidabaka gained the unsettling nickname, the Killer Grandma. The combination of killer and grandma might seem strange at first. After all, we don't usually associate grandmothers with such violent acts. However, this case is shocking for many reasons, especially with one of the most bizarre police interviews ever. Cynthia was born on February 11th, 1951. Not much is known about her early life, but we do know that at the time of the events in 2014, she was living with her daughter Laura Salinas and son-in-law Gayward Estacio. Laura and Jayward had been married for 13 years and had 2 children, a 14-year-old boy and a 13-year-old girl. The household was crowded with Cynthia and 5 other family members, including Gayward's 2 sons from a previous marriage, one of whom was 18 and also lived at home. As you can imagine, Cynthia's household is bustling with activity, housing 3 generations and 3 teenagers. Yet despite the chaos, they reside in a stunning home in Fullbrook, California, just outside Los Angeles. This upscale house is nestled in a gated community filled with expansive properties, winding roads, and beautifully manicured lawns. The whole area has a luxurious feel. You can imagine the beauty of the area, where the houses are big and located on peaceful streets, showing a life of wealth. In 2001, shortly after Laura and Gayward got married, they found themselves in an unexpected situation. Laura's mother, Cynthia, moved in with them. While this is not the ideal setup for newlyweds, they took Cynthia in because her health was declining after she suffered a stroke. This stroke impacted Cynthia's speech and balance, and she developed a gait disorder, which means she had trouble walking properly. Fortunately, their fancy house had a granny flat where Cynthia could live. This arrangement was great for her because it gave her some independence while keeping her close to Laura, who could help her if needed. However, Cynthia didn't live with them full-time. She often spent time with other family members. This way, everyone could take turns caring for her and avoid feeling overwhelmed. Laura and Gayward had busy lives. They were juggling taking care of Cynthia and managing their own family, which included 3 teenagers. While we couldn't find out exactly what Laura did for work, Gayward was a real estate agent, a rugby coach, and a military reservist. His military background influenced his coaching style, which was known to be strict and organized. Gayward was also tough on his sons, pushing them to achieve their best. They felt his tough love approach came from a caring place, but it was not the easiest environment to live in. One of his sons mentioned that, although Gayward worked hard for the family and community, he could be challenging to get along with. With Gayward's strict parenting style and Cynthia's presence, tensions in the household were heightened. 3 generations living under one roof is already complex, and the pressure from Gayward's high expectations only added to the stress. This complicated family dynamic set the stage for the events that would unfold later. Now, Cynthia was quite different from Geoward in terms of personality. While Geoward was organized and structured, Cynthia was laid back, charismatic, spontaneous. Despite their differences, both were strong-willed and had a knack for speaking their minds. This often led to clashes, especially when they disagreed about politics or household matters. A significant source of tension arose over how Geoward was raising his children, as Cynthia believed he was too strict and used military-style discipline, which she thought was inappropriate for kids. But their issues went beyond just differing opinions. Cynthia was convinced that Geoward was abusive toward Laura and the children. She noticed bruises on Laura's arms and suspected Geoward was responsible. This concern heightened the friction between Cynthia and Geoward, as they frequently argued about parenting styles. Another major point of contention was Cynthia's smoking habit. She smoked a lot, but Geoward had strict rules about smoking in the house, wanting to protect his children from secondhand smoke. Cynthia sometimes went outside to smoke, but this still annoyed Geoward. In a bizarre response, Geoward would spray her with a hose when she smoked in the garden. He claimed it was a joke, saying things like, "If I see a fire, I need to put it out," implying that her smoking was a fire hazard. However, this was not a one-time occurrence. It happened repeatedly, which was particularly harsh considering Cynthia was elderly. Laura often found herself caught in the middle of their arguments. As Geoward's wife and Cynthia's daughter, she faced pressure from both sides. Cynthia didn't hold back when it came to expressing her dislike for Geoward, often sharing her feelings openly with Laura. This complicated family dynamic created a tense living situation filled with constant conflict, making it hard for everyone involved to find peace in their home. Cynthia had always told her daughter how much she disliked her son-in-law and how she thought he was evil. The arguing and tension between them had been ongoing for a while, but things took a serious turn in January 2014. This was when Geoward hit one of the children, which made Cynthia snap. It pushed her to the point where she thought about killing him. To prepare for this drastic decision, she went to a shooting range to practice and buy bullets. At that time, Cynthia had been planning to visit her niece, but after witnessing Geoward's violent behavior, she canceled the trip. She felt it was essential to stay with Laura and the kids to protect them from Geoward. As February approached, Cynthia remained alert, keeping a close watch on him. The night before the significant event, Cynthia and Laura were watching TV in the granny flat where Cynthia lived. Suddenly, one of the children ran in, crying and asking Laura, "Why do you hate me so much to let Dad hurt me like this?" This heartbreaking moment showed the family's distress. Geoward was downstairs shouting and swearing at the child, trying to get them to come back. Later that night, Geoward broke the child's computer as punishment, which infuriated Cynthia and was likely the final straw for her.
So mean to me and all of them.
He's mean to everybody?
Yes, he is.
The next day, February 11th, 2014, was Cynthia's birthday. Laura came in to wish her a happy birthday, promising to take her out for a nice lunch, and even gave her money for gambling, as Cynthia's niece planned to take her to a casino. Cynthia had just woken up and seemed happy, but after Laura left, it was just Cynthia and Geoward alone in the house, setting the stage for the unfolding drama. On Cynthia's birthday, Laura and Geoward's daughter had a spelling bee at school, and both of them planned to attend together. When it was time to leave, Cynthia came down from her granny flat, dressed in an orange-red skirt and an LA Chargers football shirt. However, Geoward was not pleased with her outfit. He insulted Cynthia, saying she looked ghetto and like a hobo, laughing at her. This hurt Cynthia deeply, especially on her birthday. Upset, she turned to walk away, but Geoward grabbed her, continuing to mock her and belittle her.
Says, "You can't go like that because it looks like you're ghetto in this."
At that moment, Cynthia snapped. She went back to her bedroom, opened her bedside drawer, and pulled out a gun. She headed downstairs, where Geoward was outside doing laundry with his back turned. Without hesitation, Cynthia began shooting at him. Geoward fell but wasn't fatally injured. He tried to fight back, but Cynthia kept shooting until she ran out of bullets. At this point, Geoward had been shot 5 times and was on the ground, struggling to move. Incredibly, instead of fleeing, Cynthia walked to her car to reload her gun, which took some time since she usually walked with a stick. This entire attack unfolded slowly and methodically. When she returned, Geward was attempting to crawl back toward the house. Shockingly, he was still alive after being shot 5 times. Cynthia resumed firing at him until she ran out of bullets again, leaving blood everywhere. By this time, Geward had been shot 10 times. Once more, Cynthia ambled back to her car to reload. This bizarre, drawn-out attack showcased her determination and rage, as she continued targeting Geward with little regard for the severity of his injuries, underscoring a tragic and chaotic confrontation. The brutality of Cynthia's attack escalated as she reloaded her gun for the 3rd time. Remarkably, Geward managed to crawl back into the house, reaching the kitchen and locking the door. Despite his injuries, he found the strength to secure himself inside. However, this did not stop Cynthia. She shot at the door, quickly blasting the lock off, and entered the kitchen to find Geward on the floor. Continuing her assault, Cynthia fired again until she ran out of bullets. After finishing her barrage, she coldly remarked, "That ought to do it," before heading back to her car and driving away. This violent confrontation lasted an astonishing 10 minutes. While it might seem short, it provided enough time for Cynthia to reflect on her actions and reconsider stopping. In total, she fired 15 bullets, 3 aimed at the kitchen door and 12 that struck Geward.
You got your gun from your purse, and then what happened?
Went and shot him. Wasn't enough.
Did he say anything to you?
Grandma, I love you.
So,
He said that to you?
yeah,
After you shot him, he said, "Grandma, I love you"?
yeah. God damn.
Did you check to see if he was dead?
I didn't care.
The attack was far from quiet. Even though their house was in a big residential area, the sound of gunshots could be heard all around the neighborhood at around 8 a.m. Numerous 911 calls poured in from startled neighbors. One caller reported hearing several gunshots and a man's voice crying out for help. Another described the chaotic scene, noting the gunfire and a figure screaming in distress. The urgency in their voices was noticeable as they relayed the unfolding tragedy to dispatchers. Despite these frantic calls for help, the police did not arrive in time to prevent the violence. When they finally entered the house, they found Geward on the kitchen floor, surrounded by a gruesome scene of blood. Cynthia's actions after the tragic event were shocking. Geward had been shot more than 10 times, and sadly he was pronounced dead at the scene when the police arrived. The authorities immediately began their investigation, eager to understand what had happened in the home. They needed to contact the family to deliver the devastating news, but they also aimed to locate each family member to rule them out as potential suspects, knowing that most murders involve someone close to the victim. The first person they sought was Geward's oldest son from a previous marriage. At 18, he was a recovering drug addict, and there were concerns about a possible fight with Geward. However, he was quickly ruled out as a suspect. The police then turned their attention to Cynthia, but they couldn't find her. When they asked Laura about her mother's whereabouts, Laura provided a few places where Cynthia might be found. At that point, the police didn't suspect Cynthia. They believed she could also be a victim or might be injured or missing. Ironically, instead of fleeing or hiding, Cynthia was taking part in her birthday celebrations. She first visited a liquor store to buy cigarettes, treating herself to a better brand because it was her special day. Next, she headed to Denny's, where she enjoyed her favorite breakfast of bacon and eggs. Despite the horrific events that had just unfolded, Cynthia had no intention of letting anything ruin her birthday. She had originally planned to go to the casino with her niece, but instead decided to go alone. After her meal, she spent 2 hours gambling, blissfully unaware of the police investigation unfolding in the background. Cynthia's routine continued as she stopped by her favorite coffee shop for a treat, completely detached from the gravity of her actions. It was astonishing that the police had not yet tracked her down, considering she was sticking to her usual habits and visiting the very places Laura had suggested. Laura had indeed provided the police with all the possible locations where her mother might be, and the coffee shop was likely one of those spots. The police finally arrived at 6 p.m., a full 10 hours after the murder took place. Strangely enough, Cynthia was in a cheerful mood when the police confronted her. It's confusing how someone could be so jolly while being arrested for such a serious crime. She greeted them almost as if she were surprised to see them, with a carefree attitude that was unsettling given the circumstances. During her questioning, the police began to lay out the details of the tragic event at the house, revealing that Laura's husband had been killed. Cynthia played dumb, faking ignorance about the situation. Her responses were almost theatrical, as she acted surprised when the police mentioned the death. At one point, she even tried to cry, as if to invoke sympathy. The officers pressed her about her opinion of Geward. When asked, she responded with a dismissive attitude, indicating that she didn't like him and suggesting he was unkind to everyone. The police, recognizing that she was not entirely cooperative, changed their tactics to encourage her to open up. As the conversation continued, Cynthia became increasingly confident, revealing more about her feelings toward Geward and her actions.
So what did you think of him? Okay, and why do you say that?
That's the big thumbs down. You didn't like him.
It was during this exchange that one officer suggested, "It sounds like someone needed to stop him." This seemingly innocuous comment triggered a shift in Cynthia. She boldly declared that she had indeed stopped him, essentially confessing to the murder. Her behavior suggested she felt a twisted sense of justification for her actions. When pressed about Geward's status, she glibly remarked that he must be dead, almost as if she hoped he was.
Did anybody try to stop him?
Can't stop him.
It sounds like somebody had to stop him, or
I did. I did.
Okay.
I was guilty.
Okay. Somebody had to stop him.
I did.
Okay, it's okay.
Is he dead?
You tell me.
Gotta be dead.
You think he's dead?
I hope so.
It became clear that Cynthia believed she was being viewed as a hero for her actions rather than a criminal. Cynthia's reaction to the confirmation of Geward's death was nothing short of shocking. She repeatedly asked if he was dead, and when the officer confirmed it, her response was chilling. She expressed relief and even gratitude, exclaiming, "Oh, good, 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 good." Her lack of remorse was evident as she boldly stated she would do it again without hesitation. This moment was unsettling, making it hard to remember that she had just confessed to murder.
Is he alive? He's not? Oh, good, 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 good. Oh, thank you. Boom, boom, boom.
Adding to the unusual nature of the situation was the fact that her family, including Laura and her grandchildren, were watching the interview through a glass panel. Can you imagine witnessing your grandmother confess to such a horrifying act? It must have been incredibly painful for them. After the interview, the police allowed family members to visit Cynthia one by one. Laura was visibly devastated, crying uncontrollably upon learning that her mother had killed her husband. Some family members embraced Cynthia, but her youngest granddaughter, who was just out of view of the camera, refused to hug her, tearfully stating, "You just killed my dad." This heartbreaking moment showed the horrific impact of Cynthia's actions on her family.
Oh, God. Oh, I didn't have to do that. I wanted to. Oh, my God. Birthday. No. 13 years I wanted to go get him. I'm devastated. Oh, honey. Oh. Come kiss me, please.
No, you killed my dad.
Following the interview, Cynthia was taken into custody and charged with first-degree murder. Questions arose about her mental competency to stand trial, given her unusual reactions. However, she was deemed competent, and her trial began in February 2017. The confession meant her guilt was not in question, but the trial focused on whether the murder was premeditated and whether her claims of abuse justified her actions. The defense aimed to have Cynthia found guilty of voluntary manslaughter instead of first-degree murder, arguing that she had snapped after enduring years of abuse. This argument tried to frame her actions within a context of long-term suffering, presenting a complex case that would weigh heavily on the jurors. They presented witnesses, including her niece, who testified about the ongoing abuse she had observed during her visits to the home. Laura, Cynthia's daughter, also supported the claims, having testified against Geward in a previous trial. The defense tried to frame the murder as an impulsive act driven by years of trauma. In contrast, the prosecution contended that the murder was premeditated. They pointed out that Cynthia had taken several calculated steps before the shooting. She had purchased a gun, practiced at a shooting range, and bought bullets weeks in advance. This preparation indicated that the act was not a spontaneous response, but rather a planned assault. Moreover, Cynthia's behavior during the trial raised further concerns about her state of mind. Her behavior was erratic. She waved at the judge and smiled, which struck many as inappropriate given the gravity of the charges against her. Gieward's sister, Joranna Birunak, directed harsh words at Sidibaka in court, stating that Gieward had been stolen from them in 2014 by a cold-blooded murderer, and that Sidibaka was an evil person who deserved every second behind bars. She vowed never to forgive what she referred to as a horrible monster. She provided a powerful victim impact statement, accompanied by 15 photos that captured Gieward's life, love for his family, and enthusiasm for life. These images served to remind the jury of the person behind the tragedy and the intense loss suffered by his family.
Every one of these photos epitomize him, his family, and his love of life.
In contrast, Gieward's brother George expressed his pain, but also his capacity for forgiveness. He shared that every time his brother's name was mentioned, he would break down and cry. After 2 days of deliberation, the jury found Cynthia guilty of first-degree murder, emphasizing that she had no right to take the law into her own hands. On March 23, 2017, she was sentenced to life in prison, with a minimum of 50 years before she could be considered for parole. Despite the verdict, there lingered a sense of incompleteness surrounding the case. The harshness of the murder was shocking, especially since Cynthia had to reload her weapon multiple times. It was a long and painful attack, which felt even more unsettling because she celebrated her birthday not long after. When she learned that Gieward was dead, her happy reaction added another layer of complexity to her character. While the trial details were widely reported, a court document from October 2018 provided deeper insight into the abuse that Cynthia claimed to have suffered. It's important to note that this document was submitted by Cynthia's defense, presenting only her perspective, as Gieward was unable to defend himself. This added a layer of meaning to the narrative, leading to questions about the motivations behind Cynthia's horrific actions. What might have driven her to such a desperate act? Cynthia appealed her conviction, claiming she did not receive a fair trial and that her defense team was inadequate. It was as part of this appeal that the document was submitted, to provide much more detail about the abuse than what was revealed during the trial. The document describes how Gieward often harmed Laura, including suffocating her and physically punishing the children with a belt. He would verbally abuse them, belittling them and comparing them unfavorably to the family dogs. The document also explains how Gieward mistreated Cynthia. He frequently turned off the hot water in the granny flat where she lived, forcing her to take cold showers. He would offer to pick her up from her favorite coffee shop, but would deliberately fail to show up, leaving her to wait outside for hours, regardless of the weather. This was part of his punishment for her. Gieward also had a habit of hosing Cynthia down in the garden. He used a spray bottle, typically for training dogs, to spray her and the children in the face, which further demonstrated his cruel behavior. More alarmingly, the document details allegations of sexual abuse against Laura, which have not been mentioned in previous reports. These allegations were brought to light by Laura's niece, who often stayed with the family. One day she heard Laura crying inside the bedroom she shared with Gieward and saying, "Get off me." The next day, the niece asked Laura what was happening, and Laura revealed the horrific treatment she endured. She explained that Gieward would suffocate her and hold her down until she lost consciousness, after which he would assault her. When the niece heard this, she was horrified and immediately told Cynthia about Laura's situation. It must have been incredibly painful for Cynthia to hear such distressing news about her daughter, leaving her deeply upset and concerned. This new information sheds light on the gravity of the abuse faced by Cynthia and her children. Earlier in the story, it was mentioned that Cynthia was supposed to visit her niece for a short time, but ultimately canceled her trip. This change was led by her discovery of the alleged sexual abuse. While the disclaimer noted that there may not be substantial proof for these claims, if they are true, they certainly provide a deeper understanding of the situation. It's important to clarify that finding out about such abuse does not justify murder. However, it does help explain Cynthia's reaction and her sense of relief in the interview after she killed Gieward. The real question isn't whether she's guilty. It's clear she is. But was there premeditation involved in her actions? We may never know exactly when Cynthia decided to take such drastic measures. Was it after learning about the abuse? Was it witnessing Geward hit one of the children? Or perhaps it was the night before the murder, when her granddaughter expressed hurt over how Geward treated her. These uncertainties make it difficult to determine the timeline of Cynthia's decision. It appears that the murder may have been premeditated, considering Cynthia had been practicing at a shooting range just 2 weeks prior to the incident. On the morning of the murder, it seems she snapped after Geward insulted her appearance. While no one likes to be insulted, it seems relatively minor compared to everything else happening in her life. There's even a possibility that she could have approached that morning with the gun already in hand, ready to confront Geward. Maybe she had enough. Her daughter, Laura Salinas, who was also the widow of the victim, expressed her sorrow, stating that it was a tragedy and that she loved her mom and Geward. She mentioned that there was no win for anyone and described the situation as complete sadness. Sabra Cabrera, Sidabasa's niece, shared her perspective, saying that Sidabasa was not a monster and had always been a loving mother to her and a good grandmother to the kids. She found it hard to see her go away. This case is tragic for all involved. Laura lost both her husband and mother, and Cynthia, acting without remorse, took away her father and husband, impacting his family as well. Ultimately, this ends the story of the killer grandma, a heart-wrenching tale with devastating consequences for everyone. Do you think Cynthia's actions were justified? And what would you have done in her situation? Leave your thoughts in the comments section below, and don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. Thank you for watching. We'll see you guys soon. On a freezing night in Racine, Wisconsin, Saturday, January the 31st, 2004, a chilling 911 call came in. A woman trapped inside a garbage can filled with snow managed to call for help. She whispered that her ex-husband was trying to kill her. As she lay imprisoned in his truck, not knowing where he was taking her, the freezing cold snow pressed around her. She feared for her life. This woman was Terry Gendusa. Born in the mid-60s in Wisconsin, Terry had a happy childhood in a stable family. She was close to her 3 siblings, lively and full of energy. After high school, Terry attended the University of Wisconsin-Parkside. It was here, through mutual friends, that she first met David Larson in 1983. They often hung out with friends at local pubs, enjoying each other's company. However, their relationship remained purely platonic. It wasn't until 1995, 12 years later, that Terry and David reconnected. By then, Terry had just ended a long-term relationship, and David had recently left the Marine Corps. Both were looking for something serious. Having known each other for years, it felt like the perfect match on paper. They shared a history, and both were ready to settle down. However, Terry later admitted she rushed into the relationship. She felt her biological clock ticking and ignored some serious red flags. David had a bad temper and a clear disdain for women, which she overlooked. Though his anger made her uncomfortable, it was never directed at her, at first. He was more of a Karen toward hospitality workers like waiters, clerks, and cashiers. Terry was embarrassed by his behavior, but never imagined that one day she would be on the receiving end of his rage. For a while, Terry wasn't directly affected by Dave's troubling behavior, but things changed quickly after they married in April 1996. Just 4 days into their honeymoon in Hawaii, Dave hit Terry for the first time. His reason? He didn't like what she was wearing. When she refused to change, he struck her, declaring that now they were married, she had to do whatever he said. He even told her she was bought and paid for. After returning home, there were brief moments of calm, but with someone like Dave, the good times were always followed by dark ones. His behavior grew more abusive over time, both verbally and physically. Dave believed that their marriage was a contract in which Terry had agreed to follow every rule he set. To him, failing to comply meant she deserved punishment, often through extreme violence. Throughout their marriage, Terry tried to leave Dave about 5 times. She would return only when he promised to seek marriage counseling or attend anger management classes. However, once things calmed down, he refused to follow through on those promises, trapping her in a violent cycle. It's important to avoid judging Terry for her decisions. Victims of domestic violence often face complicated situations, and Terry was no exception. Dave controlled every aspect of her life. He made her leave her job, cut her off from her friends, and stripped her of any financial freedom. He forced her to surrender possession of her car, took her car, which was registered in her name, and denied her any access to financial details. Terry was given $25 a week for her expenses, and she had to balance it and show the receipts to the authorities as proof. As Terry feared that there were no ways to escape from the power of her husband, she decided to accept all his requirements, follow all his orders, and attempt to do everything he wanted as well as possible. Persistent use wears off self-esteem, and the individual feels that they are at fault for the circumstance which they are not. Terry finally came to the conclusion that it does not matter how much she tried to be the ideal wife for Dave. He would always have something wrong with her. He would use any reason to lash out, holding her responsible for his own frustrations. By the time Terry had this realization and began planning to leave, she found out she was pregnant. She was thrilled to become a mother but knew the environment wasn't ideal for raising a child. Still, she hoped that becoming a father might change Dave for the better. While Dave did treat Terry better during her pregnancy, things quickly reverted after their daughter Amanda was born in 1997. Their second daughter, Holly, was born in 1999. But even the joy of becoming a father couldn't change Dave. Finally, during a fight in late 1999, Terry reached her breaking point. Accounts differ on what exactly happened. Either Dave screamed at their oldest daughter, Amanda, or pushed Terry while she was holding Holly. But one thing was clear: he had crossed a line by involving their children. Realizing she couldn't let her children grow up in such an environment, Terry decided to leave for good. She packed up what she could, took the girls, and went to a women's shelter while filing for divorce. But Dave wasn't going down without a fight. He stalled the proceedings, refused to provide documents, and even smeared Terry's name. He was held in contempt of court for dragging his feet, thinking he could manipulate the outcome in his favor. However, his attempts to badmouth Terry, cuss out judges, and defy his lawyer backfired. Finally, on January 31, 2001, Terry was granted the divorce, severing her ties with Dave after 3 long and harrowing years. Even after their divorce was finalized, Dave remained in Terry's life. Despite Terry's accounts of her traumatic marriage, a judge awarded joint custody of their daughters. This meant that Terry still had to see the man who had terrorized her during court-ordered custody exchanges. Dave insisted that these exchanges take place at his home, refusing to meet in public despite Terry's pleas. It's unclear how he was able to dictate these terms, but it forced Terry to regularly confront the past she desperately wanted to escape. This constant reminder of her nightmare left Terry convinced that she would never date or marry again. She wanted to focus solely on herself and her daughters. But as they say, love finds you when you least expect it. Just before her divorce, Terry joined the Bel Canto Community Chorus, where she met Nick Nicolai. Nick was immediately drawn to Terry, but he respected her space during her divorce. Over time, their friendship blossomed into romance. Nick was kind, respectful, and empathetic to everything Terry had endured. He also embraced her daughters wholeheartedly, treating them as his own. By May 2001, Terry and Nick officially started dating, and after 2.5 years, they married in October 2003. Terry finally felt like she had the stable and loving family she had always dreamed of. But how did Dave feel about this? Not great. In his mind, despite the finalized divorce, he and Terry were still married in the eyes of God. He believed Terry had betrayed him and God's will by remarrying. This led Dave into blaming Terry for the disruption of the family and vowed to make her suffer for it. On the day they left the court after the divorce had been granted, he told her that one day she would wish that she had not divorced him. Terry, although already being afraid of her ex-husband at this point, believed she had already suffered the worst that he could bring upon her. Unknown to her, that was not the end of it, for Dave had more in store for her. All Terry wanted was to leave that life behind her, and she was doing just that. She had found a new husband who was such a nice man. She had started to try and rebuild her career. And the day before, on January 30th, 2004, she and Nick found out that they were going to have their own child. They were happy, as were Holly and Amanda, who had been longing for a new addition in the family. Terry and Nick could not wait to see the girls the next day to tell them and celebrate with them back from Dave. Saturday, January 31st, 2004, marked the 3-year anniversary of Terry and Dave's finalized divorce. It was a bitterly cold day in Wisconsin. Freezing temperatures, high winds, and snow covered the ground. People described the weather as so frigid it made breathing difficult. But the cold was the least of Terry's concerns. All she could think about was seeing her daughters and telling them about the new baby. As she prepared to pick up the girls from Dave's, Nick offered to go with her. However, Terry declined, knowing that his presence could make things even more tense with Dave. She wanted to avoid any unnecessary confrontation. On her way to his house, she called Dave to let him know when she would arrive. But when she got there around 10 a.m., Dave informed her that the girls weren't ready yet. Annoyed but not wanting to argue, she asked him to hurry, deciding to wait outside in the freezing cold. For almost 20 minutes, Terry paced the driveway, trying to keep warm. Finally, Dave opened the door, but her daughters were nowhere in sight. Instead, Dave came out and told her that the girls were hiding and wanted her to come inside to find them. Immediately, Terry felt uneasy. Dave hadn't allowed her into his house since the day she left him, so his sudden invitation was suspicious. But the bitter cold and her desire not to disappoint her daughters overcame her doubts. She brushed off her suspicions and entered the house, playfully calling out for her daughters as she made her way through. Almost instantly, her uneasy feeling turned to panic. Terry's worst fears were confirmed the moment she felt a searing blow to her head. She didn't realize it immediately, but her ex-husband, Dave, had struck her with a baseball bat. As she collapsed to the floor, Dave continued his assault, striking her repeatedly while yelling, "You always said I was abusing you. Now you can see what abuse really is." He hit her upwards of 20 times until she blacked out. When she regained consciousness, she found Dave binding her with duct tape from head to toe. Panic set in as Terry realized he had something terrible in mind. Desperate, she tried to bargain with him, promising to drop their custody battle and child support, but her pleas fell on deaf ears. Dave was instead fixated on a twisted idea. At some point while he was taping her ankles, her pants had come down, and he became irrationally convinced that Terry had done this deliberately to make him look bad. Further proof of his deceived mindset. Once he'd finished binding her, he placed her bruised, bleeding body into a trash can, packed it with snow, and loaded it into the back of his truck. On one of the coldest days in Wisconsin, he left her half naked, beaten, and covered in snow, showing no mercy. Despite the horrendous situation, Terry clung to a sliver of hope. In his frenzy, Dave had overlooked one crucial detail. Terry still had her cell phone in her jacket pocket. Though her face was covered with duct tape and swollen so badly that she couldn't open her eyes, she managed to break free from the tape around her wrists. Somehow, she wiggled her phone out of her pocket and dialed 911. Knowing it would be nearly impossible to speak clearly, Terry repeatedly relayed Dave's address to the operator, over and over again. Her efforts paid off as it was enough to get the police and rescue dispatched to the scene. By the time they arrived, however, Dave had already loaded Holly and Amanda into his truck and left the house. As the police responded to Terry's call, they unknowingly drove right past Dave's truck, with Terry still bound and hidden in the back. Her vehicle was hitched to the truck, and Terry could hear the sirens fade into the distance. A feeling of defeat washed over her. It seemed they had missed their one chance to save her life. When officers arrived at Dave's home, they were under the impression that someone inside was in distress. With no answer at the door, they forced their way in, only to find the house empty. Meanwhile, neighbors started gathering, and through their questions, the police quickly learned about Dave and Terry's troubled history. It didn't take long for them to realize they were dealing with something far more serious than they had anticipated. However, they had no clear idea of what exactly had transpired. Terry, meanwhile, was fading in and out of consciousness. Despite her critical state, she managed to call her husband Nick, struggling through the duct tape that covered her face to explain what had happened. Nick was horrified but knew that the best way to help her was to quickly alert the police. So they both hung up and called 911 again. Nick reached the same Racine County Dispatch Center that had received Terry's first call, and the pieces began to fall into place for the police at Dave's residence. They started to see the full, grim picture of the situation. Terry's second call, however, was less successful. By this time, Dave had crossed into Milwaukee County, and the dispatcher there was unaware of the danger Terry was in. Listening to the call, it becomes clear that the severity of the situation was not fully understood by the new dispatcher. It's understandable that 911 dispatchers need to emotionally disconnect to cope with their high-stress jobs. But there is a crucial difference between emotional disconnection for self-preservation and a blatant disregard for the well-being of the caller. In this case, it was unfortunately the second, contributing to the continued risk Terry faced. Terry's second 911 call left many stunned and angered. The operator apparently thought it was a prank, an explanation that hardly justifies her dismissive and venomous tone.
Hello? Can I help you? My husband is trying to kill me. Your husband's trying to kill you? Does he have you handcuffed or what? Masking tape. Masking tape? Then how are you holding the phone? Do you want to talk to me or do you just want to deep breathe?
For anyone listening to Terry's voice on that call, it was painfully obvious that something was terribly wrong. Yet instead of compassion or urgency, Terry was met with skepticism and dismissal. Many sources covering this case choose to gloss over this call, but it remains a glaring example of a critical failure in what should have been a lifeline for Terry. Despite the horrifying situation she was enduring, Terry continued to fight for her life. When she regained consciousness and realized they were still moving, she stuck her hand out of the garbage can, waving it desperately in hopes of attracting the attention of a passing driver. Unfortunately, it was Dave who noticed. Infuriated by her attempt to save herself, he pulled over, struck her with the bat once more, and threatened to shoot her if she tried anything else. As if that weren't enough, her cell phone rang, and Dave snatched away her one link to the outside world. She was now completely isolated. Realizing her situation was terrible, Terry made the decision to play dead, hoping to convince Dave that she was no longer a threat. As he unloaded the trash can from the truck, she lay motionless, faking death. Dave's plan was to leave her for dead in a storage locker. He wheeled the trash can into the unit, duct taped it shut, pushed it into a corner, and piled boxes on top of it to ensure she was completely trapped. He then left, slamming the metal roll-up door behind him, sealing Terry into what he believed would be her tomb. Meanwhile, the police were ramping up their efforts back at Dave's house. With time running out, they knew they had to act quickly despite having little to go on. They issued Amber Alerts for Holly and Amanda, put out all points bulletins for Dave and Terry's vehicles, and attempted to ping their cell phones. They also conducted a more thorough search of Dave's home, which proved challenging due to the extreme hoarding conditions. The house was filled with old food, dirty dishes, laundry scattered on the floor, and clutter everywhere, with narrow walkways just barely allowing navigation through the space. Would the police piece together enough information in time to save Terry, or had they already missed their only chance? During their search through Dave's chaotic house, the police made a disturbing discovery. They found Terry's pants, covered in duct tape and blood, along with a massive blood stain on the carpet. The size of the stain suggested that whoever it belonged to, presumably Terry, was in critical condition. Time was clearly running out. If they didn't find her soon, they feared the worst. Despite their best efforts to stay focused on promising leads, every direction seemed to result in dead ends. By nightfall, the police expanded their search to include every place Dave had ever been, hoping something would finally break. This turned out to be a fortunate decision. As luck would have it, they spotted Dave heading to work, casually driving as if nothing had happened. They quickly pulled him over, anticipating a confrontation with a violent and unpredictable man. But when they approached, they found Dave remarkably calm, collected, and most importantly, alone. Terry and her daughters were nowhere in sight. Dave played the role of the bewildered ex-husband to perfection. He acted completely unaware of why the police were so eager to find him. The officers decided to play along, taking a non-confrontational approach. They invited him to the station, saying they had a few questions to clear up some confusion. Surprisingly, Dave agreed without resistance. In the interview room, it became clear that Dave felt untouchable. His arrogance was palpable. Within a few minutes, he told the police that Holly and Amanda were safe at his girlfriend's house. He claimed that he had dropped them off because Terry had failed to pick them up that morning. Then Dave launched into a lengthy tirade about how terrible Terry was, insisting she was the real villain in their story. He ranted about how she had put him through hell for years, completely oblivious to the gravity of his situation. The police let him talk, knowing that sometimes the best way to uncover the truth is to let someone lie until they trap themselves. As Dave tried to paint an innocent picture of his day, he began to create inconsistencies. He was setting the stage for his own downfall. Dave sat down and began recounting his day, painting a picture of a devoted father who had made breakfast for his daughters and patiently waited for Terry to pick them up. According to him, he had waited until 11:30 a.m. before finally giving up and taking the girls to his girlfriend's house. He seemed confident in his story. Unfortunately for him, that one detail would be his undoing. Terry's first 911 call had been placed at 10:57 a.m., and the police had responded to Dave's house by 11:03 a.m., a full 27 minutes before the 11:30 a.m. that Dave claimed he had left. And when the police arrived, Dave wasn't there. This contradiction was a glaring hole in his story. Once they caught him in this lie, the police didn't hold back. They confronted Dave with everything they had: the blood found in his house, Terry's pants, the 911 calls. They hammered him with the mountain of evidence, and as they did, they noticed something shocking. Dave was sitting there calmly answering their questions while wearing pants stained with Terry's blood. He hadn't even realized it. When the detectives pointed this out, Dave scrambled. He tried to change his story, attempting to backpedal as fast as he could. He created a new tale on the spot. He claimed that while packing his daughter's school bags that morning, Terry had somehow snuck into his house, dropped her pants, and attacked him with a hammer. He said that he saw her just in time and was forced to immobilize her with a baseball bat in self-defense. From there, he claimed he blacked out and had no idea what happened next or where Terry was. The detectives weren't buying it. They reminded Dave that it was bitterly cold outside and that if Terry was still alive, time was running out. They appealed to any remaining shred of humanity he might have had, asking him to think of his daughters. But Dave just smiled, yawned, and said he needed a break. He was, in essence, telling them that no matter what, he was determined to ensure that Terry would be dead by the time she was found. It was a shocking display of cold-heartedness. Despite being caught red-handed, literally, Dave showed no concern for Terry's life. His animosity toward her was so intense that he was willing to sacrifice himself just to make sure she suffered. The detectives realized they were dealing with someone who would rather go down for murder than give up his twisted sense of vengeance. Could the investigators find Terry in time despite Dave's stubborn silence? Or would Dave's twisted resolve seal her fate? During the interrogation, Dave requested a break, which due to legal protocols had to be granted to avoid the interrogation being considered coercive. While investigators were obligated to comply, this break turned out to be advantageous for them. While examining Dave's personal belongings, investigators stumbled upon a significant clue. Among the clutter of his wallet, which contained business cards and receipts from various places, they found a business card for his storage facility located in Wheeling, Illinois, nearly 60 miles from Dave's home in Wisconsin. This seemed out of place and suspicious, as it was unusual for someone to store belongings so far from home. Despite the possibility of innocent explanations, time was of the essence. Desperation led the investigators to follow up on this lead. They contacted the storage facility and learned that Dave had indeed rented a unit there and had accessed it just hours after Terry's disappearance. This discovery intensified their suspicion, and they decided to investigate further. The facility attendant was asked to check the storage unit for anything unusual. After a tense wait, the attendant reported hearing sounds that suggested someone might be inside. This was a critical moment. Investigators instructed the attendant to call local law enforcement immediately, and Racine County Police set out for Wheeling, knowing that every second counted. As the Wheeling police arrived at the facility, they were prepared with a pry bar to force their way into Dave's storage unit. The urgency was visible, with the hope that this lead was not a dead end. Upon entering the unit, their initial optimism lowered as they observed only boxes, shelves, and a trash can. It was the trash can that ultimately caught their attention. It was duct taped shut, which led them to believe that if Terry was in the storage unit, she would be inside this trash can. The officers proceeded with caution, removing the tape and opening the lid. Inside, they found Terry, bound with duct tape, bloodied, and barely alive. She was curled up in a fetal position, frostbitten, and in a state of severe hypothermia, with her body temperature having dropped to 86 degrees. Despite her terrible condition, having survived 27 hours in such horrific circumstances, Terry's survival was nothing short of miraculous. She had lost a significant amount of blood, suffered severe frostbite, and was in a critical state physically and mentally. But what wasn't immediately apparent was the full extent of her internal injuries. Her blood pressure and respiratory rate were dangerously slow, and her kidneys were failing. Despite these grave conditions, Terry was rushed to the hospital on February 1, 2004. Her medical team was initially not sure about her chances of survival, but against all odds, Terry began a slow but remarkable recovery over nearly 2 months. Although she lost all 10 toes to frostbite and tragically miscarried her and Nick's baby, her survival was proof of her strength and resilience. Dave Larson was tried and convicted on multiple charges, including attempted murder, kidnapping, obstructing child custody, and interstate domestic violence. He is currently serving a life sentence. In 2010, he attempted to appeal his conviction, claiming double jeopardy, but the Seventh Circuit Court of Appeals rejected his claim. Determined, Dave tried to escape from prison using a complex plan involving a fake medical emergency, but he was unsuccessful. In addition to his prison sentence, Wisconsin ordered Dave to pay $3.4 million in restitution to Terry, as well as $300,000 to Nick, Amanda, and Holly. Dave's attempt to avoid this financial obligation by filing for bankruptcy was denied, as his debts were deemed the result of his own malicious actions. Dave continued to make legal attempts to involve himself in Terry's life, filing numerous requests for visitation with his daughters and for reductions in child support payments. These requests were consistently denied. Now, as Holly and Amanda are both in their 20s, Dave's ties to Terry are officially severed. Despite the trauma Dave inflicted on her, Terry has shown remarkable strength and forgiveness. She views Dave as the true victim of his actions, reflecting a profound glass-half-full mindset. Terry and Nick welcomed a son following her recovery. Today, Terry works as a public speaker, advocating for victims' rights and educating others on how to escape abusive relationships. She has played a significant role in drafting laws like the Wisconsin SAFE Act and Marcy's Law, and partners with Generations Against Bullying. Terry has truly become a powerful force for change and support for victims.
I actually hit her in the back of the head, right where your spine is. He was telling me, he was like, if you hit right there, like just one good hit, you can just knock the person out and then they'll be dead.
Cassandra Bjorga's story is one of chilling contradictions. A young woman who, despite her calm demeanor and casual attitude during her interrogation, was involved in a horrifying crime that shocked the nation.
Gwinnett County teenager and her boyfriend are accused of killing her grandparents. New this hour, investigators tell us they also plan to commit more murders.
But what was it about Cassandra's past that led her down this dark path? And how did her seemingly romantic relationship with Johnny factor into their heinous acts?
I just continue to be stunned.
Stay tuned as we unravel the layers of this disturbing case, exploring the chilling moments and shocking revelations that define Cassandra Bjorga's story. Randall and Wendy Bjorga were discovered severely murdered in their bed, their throats slit with no signs of forced entry, yet their house was ransacked. Just 6 days later, Michael and Christine Bjorga were viciously attacked upon entering their home, drenched with bear pepper spray and beaten with a metal bat. The following day, Cassandra Bjorga and her boyfriend Johnny were found unconscious and bloodied in their bathroom. As investigators dug deeper, they uncovered a chilling connection. Cassandra and Johnny were driving Michael and Christine's car, and explicit videos of them were found on Randall and Wendy's phone. It became evident that Cassandra and Johnny were central to the violence. But what drove this shocking spree of terror? What led a seemingly normal young woman and her partner to commit such horrific acts against their own family? The answers reveal a twisted web of betrayal and inhumanity. Johnny Ryder, 19, and Cassandra Borge, 17, were identified as the link. Found bleeding out in the bathroom, their survival was crucial to answering the burning questions that plagued investigators. For Johnny, his love for Cassandra was undeniable. Though they'd only been together a few weeks, he believed she was his soulmate, describing her as perfect, despite her complicated nature. She was a ball of energy, skilled in martial arts like taekwondo and kung fu, but emotionally fragile. Johnny saw Cassandra not only as his partner, but as someone he could save. To him, their love was destined, even though Johnny had just finalized a divorce 2 weeks earlier. Their bond seemed unbreakable until their connection to these severe attacks came to light. Now the police were called to investigate a strange and unsettling scene. They arrived at a house that seemed typical from the outside, with neighbors on all sides. But when they tried to enter, something felt off. The front door had been sealed shut with caulk, a construction adhesive. Forcing their way inside, they found the first floor in complete disarray, cigarette butts littering the floor, prescription bottles filled with more cigarette butts, and rotting food scattered throughout. Upstairs, the horror continued. Some interior doors were also glued shut, and inside 2 rooms, they discovered the bodies of Cassandra Borgia's grandparents, Wendy and Randall. The severity was shocking. Randall had been beaten, stabbed, and seriously harmed, with bloody footprints marking the bed where he was attacked. Wendy's body was found in the bathroom, similarly beaten, and her throat was also slit. Blood covered the walls, floors, and even the ceiling. Shortly after the discovery, Cassandra's boyfriend, Johnny Ryder, left a chilling voicemail for his mother, apologizing and calling himself crazy and evil. Soon after, both Johnny and Cassandra were found unconscious in another home's bathroom, barely alive. When Cassandra woke up in the hospital, detectives questioned her. She explained that she had felt overwhelmed by depression and anger, leading her to attempt to end her life. But when pressed about the murders, Cassandra revealed that she had been present when her boyfriend Johnny picked up a knife and severely attacked her grandparents. Though at first she tried to distance herself from the crime, she eventually admitted to thinking about killing them. The full extent of her involvement in the murders remained unclear, but the detectives knew they were dealing with a twisted, tragic situation that had left 2 people dead and 2 young lives in ruins. On the night of the murder, Cassandra was in her grandmother Wendy's room, while her grandfather Randall slept in another room. Suddenly, Cassandra heard disturbing noises, the sound of grunting, followed by the unmistakable noise of a fist repeatedly hitting flesh. It was a sickening sound, like someone being severely beaten. As the noise grew louder, Cassandra realized her boyfriend Johnny was attacking her grandfather. Paralyzed by fear, she froze. At that moment, panic and confusion overtook her. What could she do? Overcome by a strange, overwhelming sensation, Cassandra did something unthinkable. She grabbed a tire iron and struck her grandmother on the back of the head. A week after the murders, Cassandra, Johnny, and 2 others sat down with bags of McDonald's, ready to eat. As they laid out the food, Cassandra casually mentioned how tired she was of hospital food, acting as though nothing had happened. The others briefly stepped out, leaving Cassandra alone in the room. For a few seconds, it seemed as though time stood still. Then she leaned down and began to eat French fries, using her mouth because her hands were bound in casts. She continued eating, pausing periodically to glance at the camera before returning to her food in creepy silence. Cassandra's version of events was matter-of-fact. She described why she had taken part in the gruesome murder of the only people who had ever cared for her. There are many reasons why people torture others: sadistic pleasure, revenge, or the desire to extract information. But Cassandra's cold recounting of the crime, combined with her detachment, suggested a twisted mindset. It wasn't just about the act itself, it was about something much darker. Cassandra drags her grandmother's bloodied body into the room where Johnny and her grandfather are. Blood streaks across the floor, marking the gruesome path. Cassandra and Johnny had come prepared. They weren't going to leave empty-handed. They needed the safe code. As Cassandra runs downstairs, she grabs the largest knives she can find and hands them to Johnny. They confront Grandma Wendy, demanding the safe code, but she's hesitant. Johnny makes sure she knows they're serious. He stabs Grandpa Randall in the stomach repeatedly, 5 times, maybe more. Wendy pleads with them, offering money, keys, anything. Eventually, she mutters the code through her duct-taped mouth, and Cassandra runs to unlock the safe. Inside, she finds envelopes stuffed with cash. In her interrogation, Cassandra recounts how she was shocked by the amount of money. She describes the moment casually, almost as if recounting a trip to the store. Her grandmother had once joked about giving her money, but Cassandra didn't take it seriously until she found the $11,000. Now, with the money in hand, she believed she and Johnny were set for life, completely disregarding the reality of their situation. After emptying the safe, Cassandra returns to the room where Johnny is keeping watch over her grandparents. Both of them are still alive. Without hesitation, Johnny slits Grandpa Randall's throat. Next, they drag Grandma Wendy into the restroom. By now, Wendy had been severely beaten with the tire iron by her own granddaughter, yet she was still alive. Cassandra, in her eerie casualness, describes beating her grandmother's head with the tire iron, swinging it repeatedly without a second thought. Cassandra and Johnny tie up Wendy's hands and ankles and wrap duct tape around her head. Johnny assists Cassandra in binding her grandmother, who is barely clinging to life. As they finish tying her up, the scene becomes even more twisted, as the two seem to be operating almost mechanically, carrying out their grim task without remorse. In the interrogation room, Cassandra describes these horrific acts with an unsettling mixture of childishness and detachment. Her recounting of the murder is chilling in its simplicity, highlighting the twisted dynamics of the crime. The money in the safe seemed to be the key motivator, but the cruel behavior of the attack suggests a far darker element at play. After committing the murders, Cassandra and Johnny act as if nothing happened, even going as far as grabbing food and eating it at the scene. In addition to the disturbing acts, Cassandra's fascination with the amount of money in the safe adds an almost childlike quality to her character, despite the horrific nature of her actions. This mix of immaturity and evil creates an unsettling psychological profile of Cassandra and Johnny, who seem disconnected from the gravity of their crime. Cassandra's shock at her grandmother's surprising strength and will to survive adds a chilling layer to the story. When Johnny delivers the final blow to end her grandmother's suffering, it reveals the cold, methodical way they carried out their crimes. However, Melissa, Johnny's sister, and her boyfriend were also suddenly attacked by two people, one going after each of them. They were sprayed with bear spray, leaving them in pain, while Melissa struggled with a woman trying to hit her with a bat. In the chaos, Melissa managed to grab the bat, but not before the woman kicked her in the head and tried to stomp on her stomach. Frustrated and injured, Melissa yanked the woman's hair and wrestled the bat away. Meanwhile, her boyfriend was also being attacked. After Melissa handed him the bat, the attackers lunged again, causing all four to get tangled up in a wild fight. At some point, Melissa's boyfriend grabbed a beer bottle and shattered it over one attacker's head, but the attacker stayed calm and ominously told the woman, "Go get the hammer." The fight continued until Melissa's mom entered, and Melissa started screaming for help. The attackers ran off, leaving Melissa and her boyfriend injured, with Melissa needing 7 stitches and staples. It turned out that one of the attackers was Johnny, Cassandra Bjorga's boyfriend, and the other was Cassandra herself. They had planned to target Johnny's entire family. The attack was meant to be methodical, but things quickly spiraled out of control. In their desperate attempt to flee, they stole Melissa's car, leaving behind their original vehicle and crucial evidence at the scene. Later, police connected the attack to a wellness check for Cassandra's grandparents, Randall and Wendy. Cassandra confessed that the plan was to kill both of their families. They had already killed her grandparents before coming after his sister, but their chaotic attack and escape plan fell apart. Cassandra's story begins with her and Johnny before anything disturbing happens. Cassandra had been kicked out of her house after a heated argument with her grandmother. She says her grandma woke up, heard her come in late, and started yelling. Cassandra couldn't handle it anymore and left, staying with Johnny in his car. The background to this conflict was deeper, though. Cassandra had been taken in by her grandparents after they found out about her stepdad's alleged abuse, and her mother wasn't doing anything to stop it. Her grandparents even filed for custody to protect her. Despite this, Cassandra and Johnny develop a plan to harm their family. They began by killing Cassandra's grandparents, people who had done their best to protect her. Afterward, they went to Johnny's house, where they attacked his sister and her boyfriend. The situation quickly spiraled out of control. In the aftermath, it was revealed that Cassandra had been deeply troubled by her relationship with her stepfather and mother. Strangely, even though her grandparents had been her protectors, she turned against them. When asked if her mom was part of the plan, Cassandra admitted that they had considered it, but Johnny had decided it wasn't worth the time. Throughout her confession, Cassandra remained strangely calm, showing little emotion as she recounted the disturbing events, as though it were just another conversation. But why would she turn on the very people who had saved her? Cassandra and Johnny's plan to escape their troubled lives took a dark turn. They were driven by a mix of grievances and twisted logic, aiming to start anew far from their past. Johnny's ex-wife was a minor annoyance, but her presence wasn't the primary concern. Their main problems were financial and familial. They needed money and had a deep-seated resentment towards their families. The plan to kill Cassandra's grandparents and Johnny's entire family was part of their strategy to start fresh in Pensacola, Florida. Despite the seeming lack of a clear motive, Cassandra claimed they just wanted to escape reality rather than specifically target her grandparents. Their actions, however, tell a different story. They plotted to eliminate anyone who opposed their relationship, leading to the murders of Cassandra's grandparents, followed by attacks on her mother and her boyfriend. The week following the murders was unsettlingly calm. Rather than fleeing, Cassandra and Johnny stayed in the grandparents' home. They lived normally, eating takeout, spending money, and even making intimate videos, all while the bodies of the deceased lay upstairs. Their behavior seemed detached and disturbingly casual. When detectives interrogated them, they focused on the week-long gap between the murders and the next attack. Cassandra and Johnny's casual recount of their activities, from spending money to indulging in drugs, revealed a disturbing casualness. Detectives were also looking for inconsistencies in their story, aware that suspects might lie under pressure. By asking pointed questions, they aimed to expose any inconsistencies and gain insight into the suspect's state of mind. This approach was part of a broader strategy to unravel the full extent of Cassandra and Johnny's motives and mindset. Cassandra and Johnny were careful about who they invited over after they killed Cassandra's grandparents. Cassandra claimed she had only 2 friends because she didn't trust many people. She said she wouldn't have people over to the house, but would meet them elsewhere instead. She and Johnny had decided that inviting anyone over was a strict no-no. The detectives, however, had evidence that contradicted Cassandra's story. They showed her a video of her and Johnny at her grandparents' house. Cassandra's reaction was immediate and tense. She stared at the video in disbelief, shaking her head and insisting that it couldn't have been taken at her grandparents' house. She tried to argue that there was no one else at her grandparents' home, but the video clearly showed them there. Despite Cassandra's attempts to convince the detectives otherwise, the evidence was damning. The video showed Cassandra and Johnny in her grandparents' living room, rolling a joint, just days after the murders. Johnny was deeply focused on Cassandra, watching her as she prepared the joint. Their actions, captured on video, revealed their lack of remorse and their continued use of the house even after committing the murders. Their attempt to cover up the smell of decomposition by claiming a sewage problem was a lie. They had also invited people over, including their drug dealers, who took videos and noticed a foul smell in the house. Cassandra and Johnny had tried to mask the smell by pouring bleach on the bodies and gluing doors shut to keep people out of certain rooms. The video also indicated that someone else had been present at the crime scene after the murders. Cassandra's best friend received a Snapchat from her inviting her over to the grandparents' house, saying they were out of town and she had money to spare. The friend felt uneasy and decided not to go, sensing something was off. The detectives pointed out that Johnny wasn't a regular visitor to Cassandra's grandparents' house, as they didn't like him. This made the video even more incriminating. Cassandra's insistence that the video was taken somewhere else couldn't stand against the clear evidence. The detectives were determined to get to the bottom of Cassandra and Johnny's actions and uncover the full truth behind their crime. The detectives were puzzled by the fact that Cassandra's grandparents, who were not known for sudden vacations or lavish spending, left her a large sum of money. They had already interviewed Cassandra's friends, most of whom had declined her invitation to a party at her grandparents' house after the murders. This raised suspicions about Cassandra's claims. In the interrogation room, the detectives used the tactic of being overly friendly, trying to get Cassandra to open up. They even shared a meal with her to create a relaxed atmosphere. Cassandra's reaction was bizarre. She was oddly calm about her grandparents' murder, but desperately wanted the detectives to like her. which seemed childlike and unsettling. Later, they moved to Jason's apartment after the run-in with Johnny's family and a confrontation involving pepper spray. Jason, who had drifted apart from Johnny since middle school, was surprised by the sudden visit. Johnny and Cassandra spent the night, but Jason noticed unusual things the next morning, including a new car with temporary plates in the parking lot. Fully blacked-out suburban SUV parked directly in front of his apartment. This detail added to the growing suspicion around Johnny and Cassandra's activities. Its placement, glaringly visible from the ground floor windows, set off alarm bells, but Jason had no immediate way to investigate. As he was trying to make sense of it, a booming voice, amplified like a megaphone, demanded Johnny Ryder come outside. The voice echoed through the building, and Jason, bewildered, saw red laser dots on himself and the walls of his apartment. Realizing the danger, he knew he had to get his sister and mother out immediately. As they prepared to leave, Jason witnessed Johnny grabbing a knife from the kitchen. His heart raced, fearing an attack. However, Johnny's actions were unexpectedly benign. He approached Jason and his family, hugged them, and apologized profusely, expressing his sorrow and love. He then allowed them to exit the apartment, where they were met by a swarm of SWAT teams. The apartment was now surrounded, and Johnny and Cassandra were left inside, cornered with no way out. The police, wary of the armed and dangerous pair, deployed a robotic device known as a robo-dog to handle the situation. This robot, designed to neutralize explosive devices and navigate dangerous environments, was remotely controlled and could scan for clues. The device's camera revealed a troubling scene, a bloodstain on a door. When the door was opened, the authorities discovered Johnny and Cassandra inside the apartment, slumped in each other's arms and covered in blood. They had attempted to end their life twice. Cassandra and Johnny's story, likened by some to a twisted Romeo and Juliet or Bonnie and Clyde, reflected their intense, destructive bond. During interrogations, Cassandra admitted that Johnny had suggested they emulate Bonnie and Clyde. Despite her claim of not having seen the movie, she seemed familiar with its narrative. The couple's interviews revealed their twisted perception of their relationship. Cassandra, oddly calm and detached during her interrogation, contradicted the severity of their crimes with her nonchalant demeanor. Johnny, while also showing a troubling sense of calm, expressed a deep, almost romantic attachment to Cassandra, despite their brief relationship. Their actions and subsequent interviews shocked many, revealing a disturbing mix of affection and violence. Cassandra's behavior during her interrogation, with moments of unsettling calmness and sudden outbursts, became a focal point for public interest, highlighting the chilling nature of their crimes and the complex dynamics of their relationship. During one tense scene, detectives struggled to remove Cassandra's zip ties due to her cast. One detective, while carefully maneuvering scissors around her, made a comment about not wanting to accidentally stab her. Cassandra, with a calm and unsettling demeanor, finished his sentence, making light of the situation with a seemingly casual response. As the interrogation continued, Cassandra and the detectives shared a meal together, with Cassandra offering fries to one of the detectives. The casual exchange contrasted sharply with the gravity of the situation. The detectives questioned Cassandra about her past, particularly her assault charges against her grandparents. Cassandra's nonchalant attitude toward her previous violence was troubling. She described a deteriorating relationship with her grandparents, who had reportedly treated her differently after she had physically assaulted them, including breaking her grandfather's ribs. Cassandra's surprise at their change in behavior was disturbing, given the severity of her actions. When asked about her martial arts background, Cassandra explained that she had stopped practicing kung fu due to emotional turmoil, which affected her ability to control her aggression. She described an outburst of anger and sadness when she attacked her grandparents, reflecting a lack of self-control and insight into her actions. Another unsettling moment involved Cassandra's reaction to questions about her shopping spree with her grandmother's debit card. When asked about the card's bank and color, Cassandra's response was dismissive and condescending, as she seemed embarrassed by her lack of knowledge. She was also caught off guard when informed that her grandfather's wallet was found hidden under his bed, showing a bizarrely indifferent attitude toward the revelation. As the case progressed, the media could no longer label Cassandra and Johnny as modern-day Romeo and Juliet or Bonnie and Clyde. The couple's relationship had deteriorated, and they were now blaming each other for their crimes. Both pleaded guilty and received life sentences plus 21 years, with a possibility of parole in 60 years. The debate in the courtroom centered on whether their crimes would have occurred without each other's influence. Opinions varied on the driving force behind their actions. Some netizens and Cassandra's friends believed she was the primary instigator, describing her as selfish and manipulative. Despite Johnny's involvement, many felt he was influenced by Cassandra's behavior and possibly exacerbated by his own struggles with drug addiction and mental health issues. In summary, the case highlighted the disturbing nature of Cassandra and Johnny's relationship, their lack of genuine remorse, and the complexities of their motivations and influences. The case of Cassandra and Johnny is both shocking and heart-wrenching. Cassandra, who was involved in the murder of her grandparents, expressed mixed feelings during her sentencing. She described feeling like the worst person on the planet and was deeply heartbroken. Despite her remorse for the situation, she admitted that the turmoil with her grandparents contributed to her desire to escape the chaos in her life. Johnny's statement during the trial was particularly disturbing. He claimed to have found God while in prison, which was an unusual and controversial topic to bring up at such a critical moment. Johnny apologized to the victim's family, acknowledging that he had caused immense pain and suffering. He tried to convince the court of his newfound religious faith, but his words took a troubling turn. He bizarrely compared his actions to the suffering of Jesus Christ, which seemed both inappropriate and unsettling. His attempt to use religious rhetoric to seek forgiveness was seen as manipulative and out of place. The judge was clearly appalled by the couple's actions, describing their behavior as devoid of humanity and morality. She was particularly struck by the way Cassandra and Johnny tried to conceal the evidence of their crimes, even continuing to live normally while their victims' bodies decayed upstairs. The victims' families were devastated by the betrayal. They struggled with the horrific details of the murders, haunted by the thought of their loved ones' final moments. One family member described their pain, expressing anguish over whether Randall suffered or recognized Cassandra before he died. They also wondered about Wendy's final moments, grappling with the image of her slippers left on the stairs. This case is a chilling reminder of the capacity for cruelty and the deep impact it has on families. The shocking nature of the crimes committed by these young people raises disturbing questions about what could drive someone to such extreme actions, leaving many to fear and question the safety and morality of the world around them. Now, what do you think about all of this? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and do not forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more. On August 22, 2005, Stacy made a panicked call to 911, reporting that her husband, David Castor, hadn't shown up for work.
Police Communications, can I help you?
My name is Stacy Castor. My husband has locked himself in our bedroom for the last day.
Has he ever mentioned hurting himself or harming himself?
Well, Friday night when we were arguing, he told me to get out, take my kids and get out. I could leave.
Okay, don't cry. We're going to check on him, make sure he's okay.
According to Stacy, David had gotten upset, taken a bottle of Southern Comfort, and locked himself in the bedroom, refusing to come out. She assumed he had been drinking heavily and was simply sleeping it off. She even told her friend Danny Coleman that when she pressed her ear to the door, she could hear him breathing. When police arrived and forced open the bedroom door, they found David Castor dead from what appeared to be a self-murder. On the nightstand, they discovered 2 glasses, one containing antifreeze. Beneath the bed, they found an open bottle of antifreeze. In the kitchen, a turkey baster with the smell of alcohol was found in the trash, raising suspicions about what had really happened. Stacy told detectives that David had been struggling with depression due to the recent loss of his father and suggested that his heavy drinking and apparent self-murder were connected to his grief. However, those who knew David, including his ex-wife, Janice Poisson-Farmer, did not believe he would take his own life. Detective Dominic Spinelli remained unconvinced by the self-destruction theory and launched a 2-year investigation. He found that David's will left everything to Stacy and her 2 daughters, with nothing going to his own son, David Jr., which raised more questions. Spinelli also noticed similarities between David's death and the sudden passing of Stacy's first husband, Michael Wallace. Further digging revealed that Wallace had no serious health issues apart from a hernia. With rising suspicions that both men were poisoned with antifreeze, known for its painful and lethal effects, investigators decided to exhume Wallace's body to check for the signature crystals in his organs that were caused by antifreeze poisoning. On September 5, 2007, Michael Wallace's body was exhumed to uncover the truth behind his sudden death. The autopsy results were chilling. Sergeant Michael Norton of the Onondaga County Sheriff's Office recalled the medical examiner telling him that Wallace was loaded with crystals, a clear sign of antifreeze poisoning. Detective Spinelli, who had been investigating the deaths, realized this wasn't just a coincidence. He was convinced that both Michael Wallace and David Castor had been murdered, and Stacy Castor was likely responsible for both deaths. Police ramped up their investigation. They placed surveillance cameras at Stacy's home and at the cemetery where her husbands were buried. They also wiretapped her phone, and through one of these calls, they learned that Stacy had visited the cemetery shortly after Michael Wallace's body had been exhumed. On September 7, 2007, Stacy was brought in for questioning. During the interview, she made a suspicious slip-up. Detective Spinelli asked her which glass she had used to pour cranberry juice for her husband. Stacy responded, "Well, when I poured the anti-free, before quickly correcting herself to say, "I mean the cranberry juice." Spinelli immediately picked up on the mistake, but Stacy became defensive, accusing him of trying to frame her, and abruptly ended the interview. Just days later, on September 12, 2007, a new twist emerged. Ashley Wallace, Stacy's daughter, had just started her first day of college when detectives visited her with devastating news. Her father, Michael Wallace, had been poisoned with antifreeze. Shaken, Ashley called her mother, and police wiretaps captured their conversation. Stacy asked Ashley about what the detectives had told her and then suggested they share a drink to unwind after a tough day. Ashley, trusting her mother, accepted the drink. But something was wrong. Ashley began to feel drowsy and eventually passed out, winding up unconscious in her bedroom. Unknown to her, this was another attempt by Stacy to cover her tracks. On September 13, 2007, Ashley Wallace woke up with a hangover after drinking with her mother the previous night. Despite feeling unwell, she went to school as usual. When she returned home, Stacy Castor suggested they celebrate Ashley's upcoming 21st birthday early by drinking again. Ashley agreed, and her mother prepared another cocktail for her. According to former detective Valerie Brogan, Stacy's plan seemed odd from the start. The drink didn't taste good, and Ashley remembered her mother encouraging her to use a straw and drink quickly, telling her to push the straw to the back of her throat to avoid the bad taste. Ashley followed her mother's instructions, but soon felt overwhelmingly tired and went to lay down. By this point, Stacy Castor was panicking. The police were closing in on her after exhuming Michael Wallace's body and finding antifreeze traces. Desperate to shift the blame, Stacy hatched a plan to frame her own daughter, Ashley, for the murders of both her father, Michael Wallace, and her stepfather, David Castor. Earlier that week, Ashley had been questioned by investigators at her college about her father's death, and they informed her that he had been poisoned. Shocked and upset, she had called her mother, who then invited her over to unwind with drinks. The following day, after their second drinking session, Ashley's younger sister, Bree, found her unconscious in bed. Alarmed, Bree insisted that help be called. Stacy made the 911 call, but before paramedics arrived, a mysterious self-murder note appeared by Ashley's side. The note, supposedly written by Ashley, confessed to the murders of both her father and stepfather. Stacy quickly took the note and handed it to the paramedics, trying to paint the picture of a guilt-ridden daughter. But this attempt to divert suspicion would soon crumble as investigators dug deeper into the case. Tests revealed that Ashley had potentially fatal levels of painkillers in her system. She was dangerously close to death and would have likely died if she hadn't been rushed to the hospital just in time. When Ashley regained consciousness, investigators questioned her about the alleged self-destruction note and her father's murder. Confused, she explained that the last thing she remembered was her mother giving her a drink, a situation that had never happened before. Ashley was adamant that she didn't write the note and had no idea why the police were questioning her about the deaths of her father and stepfather. And finally, after 2 years of building their case, investigators finally arrested Stacey Castor in 2007. She was charged with second-degree murder for the death of her second husband, David Castor, and for attempting to kill and frame her own daughter, Ashley. During the trial, prosecutors argued that the so-called self-murder note, which was supposedly written by Ashley, was actually Stacey's creation. At the time of her father, Michael Wallace's death, Ashley had only been 12 years old. On the witness stand, she firmly denied any involvement in either of the murders and insisted that she had never written the note. Onondaga County District Attorney William Fitzpatrick and his team built a compelling case. They pointed out that David Castor's self-murder never made sense, as his fingerprints weren't found on the glass or the antifreeze container. Further investigation revealed a turkey baster in the kitchen trash, containing traces of ethylene glycol, the toxic substance found in antifreeze, along with David's DNA. Prosecutors argued that this was proof Stacey had force-fed David the antifreeze. To support their case, the prosecutors pointed to the evolution of David's illness, suggesting Stacey had administered the poison over time, using the bastard to make his death appear self-inflicted. She even claimed David had gotten the idea from watching a news report about another woman, Lynn Turner, who had poisoned her lovers using antifreeze. Prosecutors presented strong evidence that antifreeze poisoning could be identified by the growth of calcium oxalate crystals in the kidneys, a key detail that showed up in the autopsies of both Michael Wallace and David Castor. These crystals are a clear sign of antifreeze ingestion, linking both deaths to poisoning. Along with this technical proof, prosecutors pointed to money as a major motive for Stacey Castor's actions. They revealed that she had changed David's will to cut out his son from his inheritance, a move that meant more money for herself and her daughters. Castor was not only after the insurance payouts, but was also trying to secure his estate for her own benefit. Cayuga County Sheriff Dave Gould added that the pieces of the puzzle started to fall into place in 2005. He explained that if David Castor hadn't died, or if Michael Wallace had been cremated, the truth about the murders might have never been discovered. The investigation might have never gone as far as it did. In their search of Stacey Castor's computer, prosecutors found multiple drafts of the supposed self-murder note that had been left by her daughter Ashley. The timestamps on these drafts proved that Ashley was in school at the time, making it impossible for her to have written the note. This led investigators to believe that what had been labeled a attempted took his own life was actually a premeditated attempt to murder Ashley and frame her for the deaths of her father and stepfather. Ashley Wallace took the stand, recounting how her mother had convinced her to drink the strange, bitter-tasting drink just before her near-death experience. She explained that she trusted her mother, which was why she drank it, despite how bad it tasted. Ashley maintained her innocence, both in the murders and in writing the self-murder note, firmly denying any involvement in the tragic events. Castor's defense team, attorneys Charles Keller and Todd Smith, focused on creating doubt about her involvement in the murders. Their strategy was to poke holes in Ashley's version of events and suggest that Ashley, who was just 11 years old at the time of her father's death, could have been capable of murder. They tried to argue that Ashley might have had a motive due to Wallace's favoritism toward her younger sister Bree, and they suggested jealousy could have driven her to commit such a terrible act. For David's death, they brought up the troubled relationship between him and Ashley as evidence that the two didn't get along well. Castor's mother even believed that her granddaughter Ashley was guilty of the murders. In a final attempt to convince the jury of her innocence, Castor herself took the stand. During cross-examination, Onondaga County District Attorney grilled Castor, pointing out flaws in her version of events. Castor insisted that it was Ashley who had killed Wallace and David, though she couldn't offer a clear motive other than suggesting that Ashley might have had mental health issues.
Mrs. Castor, in the 3 letters that we have evidence here that you wrote to Lynn, the last guy, how many times do you recall referring to your daughter Ashley?
Probably a lot.
And how many times in those letters did you tell Lynn that you still love your daughter Ashley?
I don't know.
How about not one single time? Does that sound correct?
Could be.
Could be. Could be that you referred to her very negatively, didn't you?
I'm sure I did.
That's right, because she killed, after all, your 2 husbands, didn't she?
Yes, she did.
She did. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about a list of reasons why Ashley killed. We'll start with Michael Wallace, your own father. If you had to put these on a list for the jury, let's start with reason number one.
I don't know.
No, I'll overrule it. Go ahead.
I can't give you a reason why she would do it.
So if I give you 10 reasons, we're going to start at number one, and number one is I don't know. Did anybody in the year 2000 know Ashley Wallace better than you?
Probably not.
Did anybody in the year 2005 know Ashley Wallace better than you?
Probably not.
And you, as you just said, have been in jail for 16 months for a crime you claim you didn't commit, correct?
That's true.
And your answer to this jury, when I ask you to give them the number one reason why Ashley Wallace killed her own father with antifreeze and then stuffed rat poison down his throat, your answer is, I don't know. Correct?
That's correct.
Fitzpatrick was quick to counter, pointing out that Castor had never sought therapy for Ashley, and that Ashley had shown no signs of mental illness. He also asked why, after working for an ambulance company for years, Castor had waited 17 hours to get Ashley help when she was seriously ill. Fitzpatrick noted how Castor had dismissed David's condition, saying he looked okay, even though he was vomiting and struggling to stand. He questioned how any mother who had lost 2 husbands to poisoning would fail to seek medical help for her own daughter in a similar situation. The back and forth between Fitzpatrick and Castor grew heated, with Fitzpatrick raising his voice and even shouting at her. Keller, Castor's attorney, frequently objected, at one point requesting a mistrial due to the intensity of the cross-examination. Prosecutors introduced another critical piece of evidence during the trial: the typing sounds on police wiretaps. These sounds were heard while Castor was talking to a friend on the phone, even though she denied remembering using her computer that day. The prosecution argued that these sounds matched the sound of Castor typing one of several drafts of the self-murder note meant to frame her daughter, Ashley. Ashley had already testified that she had seen her mother working on the computer, which Castor had tried to hide from her.
I got a question for you. Wednesday night and Wednesday afternoon, were you on the computer at any time during that day?
No, I don't think so. I don't remember.
You were asked that question, then your lawyer asked you like a couple of questions later, do you remember typing that day? And you said, no, absolutely not. How is it that you're certain you weren't typing at the keyboard when you can't remember whether or not you were at the computer?
Well, if I wasn't at the computer, I couldn't be typing.
Well, you didn't say you weren't at the computer. You said you weren't sure if you were at the computer. How can you be not sure whether or not you were at the computer, but you're certain that you weren't typing? How can that be?
I answered the question he asked me.
I know you answered the question. That's not answering the question I asked you. How can you be sure that you weren't typing, but not sure if you were at the computer? Don't you type when you're at the computer?
Yeah.
You can't operate the computer without doing a little of this stuff, right?
True.
Okay. So yesterday you said, in response to this question, were you at the computer on Wednesday? You said, I really don't know. I can't remember, right?
Yes.
And then he asked you, did you type anything that day? And you said, absolutely not.
Objection, Judge. I didn't ask if you typed anything that day.
District Attorney Fitzpatrick suggested that this was the day Castor wrote the note, which bore her fingerprints but not Ashley's, in an effort to pin the murders on her daughter. He highlighted a key detail. The word antifreeze was written as anti-free in 4 different places within the note, matching the slip of the tongue Castor made during an interview when she said anti-free. Castor had claimed she was simply cutting herself off mid-sentence because she intended to say something else.
I took this picture of one like it out of my folder, and I showed it to Stacy and said I had a question for you. Stacy, regarding these glasses that were on top of the nightstand next to David's bed, you told us earlier that you had gotten David some cranberry juice and some water. By looking at the photo, would you be able to tell me which glass it was that you brought into David? Stacy leaned into the photo, was looking at it, at which time she said, when I poured the antifreeze, the cranberry juice, you're confusing me, you're jumping all over the place. At that point I said, Stacy, I simply asked you one question. I didn't jump all over, it was just one question, if you know which glass it was. At that point, the interview continued.
When she said to you, when I poured the anti-free, are you certain it was anti-free and not anti-freeze with a Z?
It was anti-free, absolutely positive. and
Thank you
free.
very much, Detective. I have no more questions.
Castor's defense team tried to counter this by bringing in a pharmaceutical expert to challenge the prosecution's argument that Castor had drugged Ashley 17 hours before she was taken to the hospital. However, on February 5, 2009, the jury found Castor guilty of second-degree murder for poisoning her husband, David, and attempted second-degree murder for overdosing Ashley. When the verdict was read, Castor closed her eyes and remained silent. Her lawyer, Charles Keller, announced that they would appeal the decision, including challenging the admission of evidence related to Wallace's death, for which Castor had not been charged. On March 5, 2009, during Stacey Castor's sentencing, prosecutor Christine Garvey made a powerful statement to Judge Fahey, urging him to impose the maximum consecutive sentences due to the extreme severeness of David's death. Garvey described Castor as cold, calculating, and without any emotion for what she had done. She criticized how Castor had partied with friends in her backyard, acting like nothing was wrong, while her daughter Ashley lay comatose in her bedroom. Human life is sacred, Garvey continued, but Stacey Castor places no value on human life, not even her own flesh and blood. To Stacey Castor, human beings are disposable. David's son, who Castor had cheated out of his inheritance, also spoke in court. He begged Judge Fahey to press the harshest punishment on Castor. Judge Fahey, visibly shaken by the case, told Castor that he had never seen a parent try to murder their own child to cover up the crime they had committed. He declared that Castor was in a class all by herself. He sentenced her to the maximum term of 25 years to life for the murder of her husband, David. Additionally, she received another 25 years for attempting to murder Ashley. For forging David's will to exclude his son from the inheritance, Judge Fahey added an extra sentence of 16 months to 4 years in prison.
All right, Ms. Everly, I have your note that the jury's reached a verdict. If you'd stand for a moment. On indictment number 2007-1271-1, the people of the state of New York versus Stacey R. Castor, as to count number 1, murder in the second degree, what is the verdict?
Guilty.
On count 2, attempted murder in the second degree, what's the verdict?
Guilty.
And on count 3, offering a false instrument in the first degree, what is the jury's verdict?
Guilty.
All right. Do you wish the jury polled, Bill? Chuck?
Yes, Judge.
All right. Kelly, go ahead.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, as stated through your foreperson, you have found the defendant guilty of all 3 counts in the indictment. Juror number 1, is that your verdict?
Yes.
Juror number 2?
Yes.
Juror number 3? Juror number 4?
Yes.
Juror number 5?
Yes.
Juror number 6?
Yes.
Juror number 7?
Yes.
Juror number 8?
Yes.
Juror number 9?
Yes.
Juror number 10?
Yes.
Juror number 11?
Yes.
And juror number 12?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of both parties and myself and the people of Onondaga County, I want to take this opportunity to thank you and you folks who are alternates, your patience too over the last several days when you haven't been able to deliberate. I'm very, very grateful for your patience and your understanding also. Your jury service is over. You're certainly free to go with our thanks. You're free to talk to anybody about the case that you wish, whether it be the lawyers, the press, each other, your families. But I want to thank you really with very sincerely, and I hope stay warm.
Thank you, ladies. I'd like to check, if you don't mind.
With her sentencing complete, Castor's fate was sealed, and she was left to face the long years ahead behind bars. The trial lasted for 4 intense weeks, during which Ashley Wallace took the stand to speak about the impact her mother had on her life. With tears in her eyes, Ashley told the judge that she hated her mother for ruining so many people's lives. Yet despite her anger, she still expressed love for the bond they once shared. "I never knew what hate was until now," Ashley confessed.
The biggest question I ask is why? Why did she do these things? I know that's probably never going to be answered. There are so many things that she has ruined. She'll never be able to see Bree graduate. My father will never take me down the aisle. She'll never get to see her grandchildren. All those things she took away from me. She killed 2 people and tried to kill me and blame it on me and blame me for the other deaths. That bothers me so much. I had to pretend for a year that everything was okay, that nothing was bothering me, even though I was worried about the trial and worried whether the jury would believe me. I hate my mother for ruining so many people's lives. I didn't even know why she did it. What gave her the right to play God with people? And I hate her for having me be the one that found my dad, just like her for having Bree found me. I never knew what hate was until now. Even though I do hate her, I still love her at the same time. That bothers me. It's so confusing. How can you hate someone and love them at the same time?
She went on to say that she wished her mother would apologize for everything she had done, especially the lies. As horrible as it makes me feel, this is goodbye, Mom, Ashley said.
I had all these fears about if the jury hadn't believed me. What if she got out and tried to hurt me again? Or what if she tried to hurt my sister? I didn't kill anyone and I didn't try to kill myself. I would never leave my sister or Matt. I just don't understand how you can say you love someone and in the next breath try to kill them. I wish she had told me what was going on. She was my best friend and she took that all away just because she got scared. Well, I was scared too when I was in the hospital all by myself and I wanted my mom. But she was the one that did this. I just want to sleep one night without thinking about this. I'm not an angry person and I hate being mad at her. I want to forgive her, but I'm not sure if I can. I just hope God can forgive her. She has to listen to me this time. I didn't get a chance to say goodbye, and this will be the last time I get a chance. As horrible as it makes me feel, this is goodbye, Mom. As hard as you tried, I survived, and I will survive because now I'm surrounded by people that love me. I'm going to do good things in this world, despite making me, in every sense of the word, an orphan. Thank you, Judge Fahey, for letting me express my feelings.
The weight of Ashley's words remained in the courtroom, showing the complex emotions that came with being betrayed by someone so close. Ashley's statement made it clear that, despite the pain and betrayal, she had found strength in her survival and in the love and support of others. Prosecutor William Fitzpatrick informed the court that, according to New York sentencing guidelines, Stacey Castor would have to serve more than 51 years before she could be considered for parole. Given her age, that effectively meant she would spend the rest of her life in prison. Despite the overwhelming evidence against her, Castor continued to maintain her innocence. In a 2009 interview with Muir, she adamantly declared, "I did not kill Michael Wallace, I did not kill David Castor, and I did not try to kill my daughter, period. And I will never say that I did, ever." Her words, however, did little to change the fact that her crimes had shattered so many lives. Ashley Wallace said that her mother had once been her best friend, but that she had taken all of that away. She expressed that she would have done anything for her mother, but her mother had chosen to try and kill her instead. Stacey Castor, now identified as New York Department of Corrections inmate number 09G0209, was placed in Bedford Hills Correctional Facility for Women in Bedford Hills, New York. Even with credit for time served, her earliest possible release date was June 15, 2055, which was just over a month before her 88th birthday. This date seemed to mark the harsh reality of her crimes and the deep impact she had caused. In April 2009, a 2-hour 2020 special aired on ABC News, which covered Castor's trial. During the media coverage, she was often referred to as the Black Widow, a nickname previously given to Lynn Turner, who was also convicted of poisoning her partners. In the special, Ashley admitted that she still did not understand how her mother, or any mother for that matter, could try to kill her own child. It was a question that had also haunted the public. How could someone so close, so trusted, betray their own child in such a way? Despite the overwhelming evidence, Castor maintained her innocence, stating that she was shocked by the verdict. She claimed that Ashley had brought this situation on herself and suggested that both of them knew what had happened. Nevertheless, she did express some sympathy for her other daughter, Bree, and claimed that some family members still supported her. Bree, like her sister Ashley, had not spoken to Castor after the trial. She acknowledged that although losing her mother was difficult, She was relieved that the verdict had found Castor guilty, as they all knew she was guilty. Ashley, too, expressed that she would have done anything for her mother, but instead, her mother had tried to kill her. ABC interviewed forensic psychiatrist Dr. James Knoll about the case, and he addressed viewers' questions via video on April 23, 2009, and through site comments on April 27, 2009. He pointed out that most self-murder notes tend to focus on themes of remorse, with the writer expressing an inability to go on with life. However, the note that was supposedly written by Ashley focused instead on removing blame from Castor. Knoll noted that this theme appeared 14 times within the note, which led him to believe that Castor would never admit to guilt. He explained that individuals like Castor, who are guilty of such crimes, often follow the code of deny, deny, deny until the very end. Castor's story was adapted into a Lifetime television film titled Poison Love, The Stacey Castor Story. The film, part of the Ripped from the Headlines series, premiered on February 1, 2020. Nia Vardalos portrayed Castor in the film, which retold the chilling events surrounding her crimes. Stacey Castor was found dead in her cell on June 11, 2016. At first, it wasn't clear how she had died, and her death was listed as undetermined. However, the DA's office later confirmed that she had died of a heart attack, with no signs of foul play or ended her own life. She was only 48 years old and had never seen her daughters again after the trial. What would you do if you found out someone you loved tried to harm you? Do you think Ashley will ever find closure after everything she's been through? Leave your thoughts in the comments section below. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. Thank you for watching. We'll see you guys soon. On August 27, 2015, what began as a routine morning would soon turn into a nightmare.
911, where's your emergency? You need to send paramedics. I think he shot everybody. He has a handgun. He's shooting everybody. That gunfire? I'm just so scared.
Information about a deadly rampage in a St. Johns County neighborhood. Investigators say James Cawley shot and killed his wife and her best friend.
You know, there's 5 children that lost their mothers on that day.
Little League baseball games are attended with an empty blue chair. For Lindy to sit in and watch Patrick play.
Always take domestic violence seriously, because you never know at what point it might escalate and something happen like what happened to Amanda.
Amanda and James Cawley Jr. carefully selected their family home in the tranquil community of Mirabella, St. Augustine, Florida, a locale celebrated for its upscale, resort-style ambiance. This picturesque setting was the backdrop for the life they dreamed of for their children. Mirabella's reputation for offering a blend of luxury and convenience was reflected in the Cawleys' seemingly perfect existence. Neighbors vividly remember James joyfully playing with their young children, Trey, who was 6 in 2015, and Avery, then just 4, in the quiet safety of their cul-de-sac. The Cawleys were known for their warm and welcoming demeanor, often hosting lively gatherings where the sounds of laughter and camaraderie echoed through their home. However, beneath the surface of this idyllic life, the once close-knit couple began to grow apart. Yet they navigated this distance with a composed grace, never letting their private struggles disrupt the image of harmony they projected to the world. Whatever turmoil existed between them remained behind closed doors, carefully concealed, leaving only the outward appearance of a life filled with joy and perfection. It was precisely because of the seemingly perfect life the Cawleys led that the events of August 27, 2015, shocked the entire neighborhood to its core. Around 9:00 a.m. on that fateful day, Rachel Hendrick received unsettling news. Something was terribly wrong with her dear friend Amanda. Rachel and Amanda had forged a close bond over the years, having first met at a mutual acquaintance's party. Along with Lindy Dobbins, the 3 women had become an inseparable trio, supporting one another through life's ups and downs. Whether it was watching each other's children or simply offering a listening ear, they had become each other's pillars of strength. On that tragic morning, Rachel had just dropped her kids off at school and was heading to a hairdresser friend's house for an appointment. Little did she know that this routine day would be forever marred by the unimaginable events that were unfolding, events that would shatter the tranquility of their close-knit community and leave lasting scars on those who had shared in the collie's seemingly perfect world. After her hair appointment, Rachel went straight to Amanda's house, only to find the usually immaculate Mirabella home in a state of complete chaos. Amanda had been out the previous night, and when she returned at 9:00 a.m., she was met with a terrifying sight. Her once pristine home had been ransacked. This was no ordinary break-in. Nothing was stolen, but everything had been rifled through, torn apart as if someone was desperately searching for something, perhaps evidence of a hidden secret. The chilling realization that she might be in grave danger likely dawned on Amanda at that moment. It was perhaps this fear that led her to call several friends to her side, seeking safety in numbers. But tragically, safety was an illusion that morning. Inside the home were 4 people: Amanda, Lindy, Rachel, and Lamar Duberly. Lamar was Amanda's boyfriend, whom she had met in April after formally separating from her husband James in June. The atmosphere in the house was thick with unease as the group tried to make sense of the situation, unaware of the imminent danger that was about to strike, forever altering their lives. Lamar Duberly was no ordinary man. He was ex-military, having attended the prestigious U.S. Naval Academy and the Marine Corps University, and even worked at the Pentagon. His impressive background extended into corporate management, where he met Amanda while they both worked at Fanatics, a sportswear company. As Amanda's marriage with James began to unravel, she and Lamar grew closer, eventually starting a relationship after her separation. So it was no surprise that when Amanda discovered her home ransacked on that fateful Thursday morning, Lamar was the first person she called. Along with Lindy and Rachel, he rushed to Amanda's side, determined to comfort her and help restore a sense of safety in the home that now felt so violated. Amanda led her friends through the house, showing them the unsettling damage done to her property. Lamar, taking charge, showed Rachel the damage in the garage while Amanda and Lindy remained upstairs, trying to make sense of the situation. The air was thick with tension and unease as Lamar and Rachel returned to the living room, unaware that the day's troubles had only just begun. What had started as a morning of shock and confusion was quickly spiraling into something far more sinister, and none of them could have predicted the devastating events that were about to unfold. The attacker was none other than Amanda's estranged husband, James. In a horrific turn of events, James stormed into the house that had once been a symbol of their family's happiness and opened fire on Rachel and Lamar. The sound of gunshots shattered the peaceful quiet of the morning, echoing through the home that had once been filled with laughter and warmth. Windows exploded under the impact of the bullets as James aimed to kill, turning the place where they had shared so many memories into a scene of terror and violence. What had once been a sanctuary was now a battleground, and the lives of those inside were hanging by a thread. James was in the backyard, gun in hand, his rage palpable as he shouted over and over, "Where is he? Where is he?" Lamar quickly understood the terrifying reality. James, Amanda's estranged husband, was hunting for him. As Amanda's new boyfriend, Lamar was the target of James's fury, driven by a jealous rage that had pushed him to the brink. The realization hit Lamar like a wave. James was armed, unhinged, and determined to exact revenge. Every second counted as Lamar grappled with the knowledge that his life was in imminent danger, with James ready to pull the trigger without hesitation. In a desperate bid to save everyone, Lamar yelled for them to run. He bolted out of the house, racing through the garage and ducking under the door as it opened just enough for him to escape. He sprinted between 2 houses in the cul-de-sac, his heart pounding as he tried to put as much distance as possible between himself and the armed man on a rampage. Meanwhile, Amanda and Lindy, who were further from the exit, found themselves trapped with no way out. Their only option was to retreat into the master bedroom. Rachel, sensing the danger, followed them upstairs. In a panic, Amanda hid herself in the bathroom, hoping the door would shield her from the violence outside. Rachel and Lindy, with no other place to go, quickly barricaded themselves inside the closet, praying that the flimsy barrier would be enough to protect them from the wrath of an enraged James. The once peaceful home had turned into a fortress of fear, with each second feeling like an eternity as they waited in terror, hoping to survive the nightmare unfolding around them. Lindy crouched behind a chest of drawers inside the master closet, her heart racing as she tried to make herself as small and inconspicuous as possible. Rachel, trembling with fear, did her best to barricade the closet door, frantically pushing against it with whatever she could find, knowing it might be their only defense. Meanwhile, James had entered the house, his footsteps heavy and deliberate as he moved through the once familiar space, now driven by a murderous rage. If James was searching for Lamar, he hadn't yet realized that Lamar had already made his escape. Instead, he was coming up the stairs, gun in hand, his anger palpable as he drew closer to the master bedroom. The sound of his approach echoed in the terrified silence, each step heightening the tension. Rachel and Lindy, trapped in the closet, could only hold their breath and hope that the flimsy barricade would be enough to keep them safe from the man who was now only feet away, intent on finding his target. Rachel could hear James in the bathroom, his voice raised in a frenzied conversation with Amanda. The tension was unbearable as Lindy, with shaking hands, dialed 911.
911, where's your emergency? You need to send paramedics. I think he shot everybody. He has a handgun. He's shooting everybody. That gunfire? I'm just so scared. I'm scared he's going to come try to find me. Please.
The call was made at 10:36 a.m., a lifeline in the midst of what had become a terrifying ordeal. The women were in grave danger, trapped with a man who was clearly unraveling before their very eyes. James, consumed by his rage, was screaming at Amanda, demanding to know, where is he? In his frenzy, he hadn't realized that Lamar had already fled, leaving only his estranged wife and her friends behind. Amanda, trying to calm the situation, told him she didn't know where Lamar was, though the truth likely mattered little to James in his unhinged state. The minutes dragged on, each one more terrifying than the last, as they all waited to see what James would do next, hoping against hope that help would arrive in time. Rachel, paralyzed with fear, huddled in the closet beside Lindy, who was desperately talking to the 911 operator. The two women had no idea what had happened to Amanda, whether her enraged husband had already shot and killed her, or if she was still trying to reason with him. The uncertainty was suffocating. James had been frantically searching for Lamar, his anger boiling over in a quest for revenge. But Lamar was long gone, having escaped moments before James stormed into the house. Rachel and Lindy could only imagine what James would do once he realized that his intended target was no longer there. Would he turn his fury on them, desperate to lash out at anyone in his path? The fear of the unknown, of what might happen next, made every second in that closet feel like an eternity. They held their breath, waiting, hoping against hope that they would survive the nightmare that had descended upon their once peaceful world. Fearing for her life and in agonizing pain from the bullet wound, Rachel instinctively backed away from the door, her heart pounding in her chest. She knew she couldn't hold the door any longer, and in her weakened state, she allowed James to slam it open. But to her shock, James didn't even glance in her direction. His rage was single-minded, focused entirely on Lindy, who was still on her knees, desperately clutching the phone as she pleaded for help with the 911 operator. James stormed past Rachel, his eyes locked on Lindy. The sheer force of his fury was terrifying, and Rachel, helpless and wounded, could only watch as he approached Lindy with deadly intent. The room, once a place of refuge, had become a scene of utter horror as James closed in on his next victim, his anger unrelenting and his actions driven by a terrifying sense of vengeance. In a desperate bid for her life, Rachel fled the house, her arm throbbing from the bullet wound. She ran as fast as she could, searching for anyone who could help. She managed to find refuge in the home of a mutual friend, her heart racing as she tried to process the chaos she had just escaped. Meanwhile, Lamar, who had already evaded James's wrath, came across someone else who immediately called 911 for help. But by the time the police arrived, it was too late. James Colley Jr. had already fled the scene, leaving behind a horrific trail of destruction. Rachel had been wounded in the arm, but miraculously, Lamar was unharmed. Tragically, both Lindy and Amanda were not so fortunate. Lindy had been shot 3 times, and Amanda had suffered 9 gunshot wounds. The sheer brutality of the attack was staggering. James had shot Amanda once before breaking into the closet where Lindy and Rachel were hiding. After killing Lindy first, he unleashed his fury on Amanda, firing 8 more shots into her with a 9mm handgun until it ran out of bullets, then switching to a .45 caliber pistol he had brought as a backup. The level of rage James harbored against his estranged wife was horrifying, evident in the brutal and calculated way he carried out the murders. But why had it come to this? James had been consumed by jealousy, driven to madness by the thought of his wife moving on with Lamar. What had once been a marriage filled with hopes and dreams had devolved into a nightmare, culminating in this senseless tragedy. The rage that led James to murder his wife and her friend was fueled by a toxic mix of jealousy and despair. But how had it spiraled to such a horrific end? The answers lay buried in the disintegration of a relationship that had once been filled with promise, now forever marred by the devastating events of that fateful morning. Not much is known about the early days of James and Amanda's relationship. In 2015, Amanda was 36, a year older than James. Born in Orlando, Florida, Amanda had built a successful professional life for herself and was surrounded by a close-knit circle of friends. She was known for her warmth, ambition, and the vibrant energy she brought to her work and social life. James, on the surface, appeared to be equally accomplished. He worked in the mortgage industry, where he carved out a respectable career. He and Amanda seemed like a well-matched pair, both thriving in their respective fields and leading what appeared to be a successful life together. James was a man who, outwardly, seemed ordinary, dedicated to his work and family, loved by those close to him. His sister, Crystal, was especially fond of him, always speaking highly of her brother. But beneath the surface, there were complexities in their relationship that were not visible to the outside world. The cracks in their marriage, once small and perhaps unnoticed, eventually widened into an abyss that neither could cross. As their relationship unraveled, the pain and frustrations that had been simmering for years came to a tragic and violent head, revealing a side of James that no one, not even those closest to him, could have anticipated. But beneath the surface of this seemingly loving father lay a dark side and a troubled past. While James outwardly presented himself as a devoted husband and father, there were aspects of his life and personality that remained hidden from public view. The man who appeared to be the picture of normalcy had, in reality, struggled with demons that he kept tightly concealed. Over time, these hidden struggles began to surface, revealing a darker, more volatile side of James that few had witnessed. This undercurrent of anger and unresolved issues contributed to the gradual disintegration of his marriage to Amanda, ultimately leading to the tragic events that would forever alter the lives of those involved. The loving father and successful professional was, in reality, a man grappling with a darkness that would eventually consume him and devastate those around him. There was a time when the tension between James and Amanda reached a breaking point, a moment seared into the memory of their child, a moment when violence erupted before their very eyes. The cracks in their relationship, which had been deepening for some time, finally split wide open when James was caught in a moral affair. The revelation hit Amanda hard, and the anger that had been simmering beneath the surface for so long finally erupted in a storm of fury. The child recalls one night vividly, a night when the simmering tension boiled over into violence. Amanda, her emotions raw and uncontained, sat on the stairs with a baseball bat clutched tightly in her hands. Her grip was firm, her resolve unshakable. Without a word, she rose and began hitting James with the bat, each blow fueled by a mixture of betrayal, hurt, and anger. But the violence didn't end there. On Thanksgiving, the day meant for family and gratitude, another confrontation ensued. Amanda arrived at the house, her determination unyielding. James, perhaps anticipating another outburst, tried to keep her from entering, but Amanda was relentless. In a moment of desperation, she grabbed a knife, the situation escalating to a terrifying level. These moments marked the descent of their relationship into a place of darkness and chaos, where love was overshadowed by betrayal and anger. The violence that erupted between them was a harrowing sign of just how far things had deteriorated, a tragic prelude to the even greater devastation that would later unfold. James had witnessed firsthand the aggression stemming from his father's extramarital affair, with his mother's anger boiling over into physical violence that he could not avoid seeing. These early experiences, where he saw his mother physically attack his father, likely left a deep imprint on his psyche, a traumatic imprint that, as a defense lawyer might argue, could have influenced his later actions. The violence he witnessed in his childhood may have planted seeds of unresolved anger and a distorted view of relationships and conflict. By August 27, 2015, James and Amanda were already separated, having been apart for months. Despite the separation, the unresolved issues and lingering emotions between them simmered just below the surface. While their outward lives continued, the impact of James's past and the escalating tensions in their relationship were like a ticking time bomb. The events of that day were not merely a result of recent frustrations, but a culmination of long-standing issues, shaped by the past and brought to a tragic head in their final confrontation. James was not only grappling with the disintegration of his marriage, but was also involved with someone else during this time. His relationship with Amanda had become increasingly toxic, marked by escalating aggression and jealousy, particularly over Lamar's presence in Amanda's life. Despite their separation, James was consumed by a disproportionate rage at the thought of Amanda moving on. A few months before the murders, a neighbor sent James a photo of Lamar mowing Amanda's lawn without a shirt on, an image that seemed to ignite his fury. This incident triggered a torrent of abusive texts and voicemails directed at Amanda, messages that continued to escalate right up until the day of the murders. In one of these messages, James texted Amanda, "Oh, and your boyfriend has been parking at the playground and walking around the back. The whole neighborhood knows. You should just have him park out front like a man. Yeah, everyone knows what you are. Don't worry, I will speak with him face to face sooner than later." Amanda, trying to defuse the situation, responded, "He's not my boyfriend, like I've told you before. He helps me with the yard work, paint, moving furniture, etc." But James, refusing to believe her, replied, "So why doesn't he park in the driveway if he isn't hiding? And I guess he is married, right? I have a pic of him." These text messages were thinly veiled threats, an ominous precursor to the violence that was about to unfold. James had a history of acting on these threats. Amanda had already secured a domestic violence injunction against him, which he had violated by taking her clothes from her house and setting them on fire in the yard. Despite this blatant violation, James appeared in court on the morning of August 27th, calm and collected, less than an hour before he would commit the horrific murders of his wife and her friend. The contrast between his courtroom demeanor and the violent rage he unleashed afterward was a chilling reminder of the darkness that had been festering within him, culminating in a tragic and brutal end. James exhibited deeply contradictory behavior in the days leading up to the murders. On August 26th, just one day before the tragedy, he sent Amanda a text that seemed conciliatory, saying, "Please try to start forgiving me so we can move on. I really miss you and our family being together." But this apparent plea for reconciliation was quickly overshadowed by another invasive and aggressive act. Around 4:00 a.m. on August 27th, James broke into Amanda's house searching for evidence that she was seeing someone new. Fueled by jealousy and rage, he found what he was looking for, adult toys and men's clothing, and in a fit of anger, he ransacked the house. When Amanda returned home later that morning at 9 a.m., she was confronted with a terrifying scene of destruction. It was this shocking discovery that led her to call Rachel and Lindy, inviting them over for what would tragically be their final moments. After vandalizing her belongings, James texted Amanda again, his tone shifting from rage to desperation. "You're an awesome person. Don't take me from my kids. It's all I have. Call me or I'm going to come find you." This ominous message was one of the last communications he would have with her before committing the ultimate act of violence. Though Amanda did call him, leading to an argument at 9:41 a.m., just 10 minutes after James left the courthouse, it didn't deter him from following through on his threats. From the courthouse, James made a series of stops, first to a gas station, then to his sister's house where he had been staying, and finally back to the gas station to buy fuel. During this time, he must have armed himself with 2 handguns, a 9mm and a .45 caliber, as by the time he reached Amanda's house, he was fully equipped to carry out his deadly intentions. On his way to Amanda's, James made a call to his father. A dog walker nearby overheard the conversation, later testifying that she heard James's father pleading with him. "Please, please, son, come back and get your truck. Everybody knows what you've been through." To this, James responded in a voice filled with despair, "I just can't take this anymore." These final moments leading up to the murders paint a harrowing picture of a man driven to the edge by a combination of jealousy, anger, and unresolved emotional turmoil. Despite his outward pleas for reconciliation, James was caught in a downward spiral that ended in unimaginable violence, leaving a trail of devastation in its wake. When James arrived at Amanda's house, he parked on an adjacent street and approached from the rear, discarding all caution. His intentions were clear as he opened fire on Rachel and Lamar in the living room, a man on a terrible mission who wouldn't stop until 2 people lay dead. After brutally killing Lindy and Amanda, James fled the scene, leaving behind 2 witnesses, Rachel, who was mildly injured, and Lamar, who had miraculously escaped unharmed. The police, aware of the severity of the situation, immediately launched a manhunt to capture him. Later that same night, James was found in Norton, Virginia. His reckless driving had nearly run another vehicle off the road, prompting the driver to call 911. She described the frightening encounter, saying, "He was stopped in the middle of the road. I had to stop. He was on me. My kids are scared. My mom had to sit in the back of my car to keep them calm. They're scared and I have a newborn." Norton police quickly responded and stopped James in his car. He was found in possession of several firearms. A background check revealed that he was wanted for homicide in Florida, and he was arrested on the spot. James was subsequently charged with multiple counts, including the first-degree murder of Amanda Colley, the first-degree murder of Lindy Dobbins, the attempted first-degree murder of Rachel Hendrick, the attempted first-degree murder of Lamar Duberly, burglary with assault or battery, burglary of a dwelling, and aggravated stalking after an injunction. During the trial, the defense argued that the attack had not been premeditated and that James had been in an aggravated emotional state, possibly under the influence of Ambien, alcohol, or other drugs, and experiencing parasomnia, effectively sleepwalking. However, this defense was significantly weakened by the fact that just an hour and a half before the killings, James had appeared in court. During that hearing, he denied being under the influence of any intoxicants and responded sensibly and reasonably to the injunction proceedings. This directly contradicted the defense's claim that he was in an altered state due to substance use the night before. Further undermining the defense's case was footage and testimony that painted a different picture. The jury, after considering all the evidence, unanimously found James Colley Jr. guilty on all counts. They also recommended the death penalty unanimously, based on 4 aggravating factors proven beyond a reasonable doubt. He had been previously convicted of another capital or violent felony, applicable because he had committed multiple murders and attempted murders simultaneously. He committed the murders while also engaging in burglary. Each murder was especially heinous, atrocious, or cruel. He committed each murder coldly, callously, and with premeditation. The medical examiner's testimony was particularly harrowing, revealing that Amanda was conscious throughout the entire ordeal, suffering 9 gunshot wounds before she finally succumbed. The sheer brutality of the crime left a lasting impact on all who heard the details. In November 2018, James was sentenced to death. He appealed the sentence, but in 2020, his appeal was denied, and his death sentence was upheld. He remains on death row. Meanwhile, the 2 children he had with Amanda are now living with their grandparents, and Lindy Dobbins' 3 children, who were 16, 10, and 9 at the time of the murders, continue to live with their father. The scars of this tragedy run deep, leaving behind a legacy of pain and loss for the families involved. How do you think James Colley Jr.'s traumatic past and the violence he witnessed in his childhood influenced his actions leading up to the tragic events of August 27, 2015? What could have been done differently to prevent the escalation of aggression and ultimately the horrific outcome in the Colley Dobbins case?
911 is John. What's the address emergency?
Hi, there is an emergency. I found something in my son's closet wrapped in a plastic bag.
Okay, what was it?
I think it's a human head.
It's a what?
I think it's a human head.
Parents have some concerns of some stuff they may have found in your room?
Yeah, I believe so.
And what would it be?
A human head and hands.
In the case of Brian Cohey Jr., the answers are chilling. Diagnosed with autism and struggling with emotional disconnect, Cohey's descent into darkness ended in a severe murder. But how does someone admire figures like Adolf Hitler and Ted Bundy, considering them role models? Is Cohey a product of his environment, or is he simply a monster born from darkness? Stay with us till the end as we dive into the depths of depravity, exploring whether evil is born or made. Brian's story begins in Grand Junction, Colorado. At just 19, he committed a horrifying crime, despite being raised in what seemed like a normal, middle-class family. His father ran a life jacket program, and his mother operated a daycare. These were good, supportive people, yet like many parents, they missed some red flags, possibly because they believed in the best in their son. Now, as Brian grew up, troubling behaviors emerged. From early on, he showed signs of sadism in the way he enjoyed making others suffer. He thrived on hurting people emotionally and psychologically, often going out of his way to make life difficult for others. Former classmates described him as nasty, and he would intentionally trigger panic attacks in those who struggled with anxiety. He enjoyed seeing others in pain, whether it was emotional or physical. Despite coming from a family with the means to provide a stable upbringing, by middle school, Brian's behavior had escalated. His peers sensed something deeply wrong with him, and his inability to follow rules and respect others became a constant issue in school. There was an unsettling aura about him that hinted at the darkness inside, long before his crimes came to light. By the time Brian Cohey Jr. was in 11th grade, his behavior had escalated to the point where his peers didn't feel safe around him. His parents were called into a meeting with the school, which was a troubling situation for any parent. While cruelty among children is often temporary, Brian's actions seemed more deeply rooted. This wasn't just typical misbehavior. It had become so noticeable that teachers and other students couldn't ignore it. It had reached a level where the school felt it necessary to involve his parents, highlighting how severe the issue had become. Brian was diagnosed with several mental health disorders, including major depressive disorder, ADHD, and he was also on the autism spectrum. While ADHD can lead to focus and behavioral problems, and autism varies greatly in its impact, his behavior stood out for its antisocial nature. Brian struggled to connect with others in socially acceptable ways, which likely compounded the sense that something was off. After graduating high school, Brian found a job at Safeway as a courtesy clerk. His friend described him as edgy, with a dark sense of humor, often talking about killing, a topic that raised major red flags. While it's normal to use humor to cope, constantly discussing violence isn't typical. People around him, even those who knew him well, felt uneasy. Some outright hated him, and his behavior was so alarming that a friend once remarked, "If anyone's going to end up a killer, it'll be Brian." This instinctive fear people had about Brian wasn't misplaced. Even those who had grown close to him noticed the danger signs. Whether in jest or serious reflection, many sensed that Brian Cohey Jr. embodied a darkness that could lead to something far worse, an unsettling reality that would soon happen. On February 28, 2021, something strange happened involving Brian Cohey Jr. Emergency services were called after his car was found floating in the Colorado River. When officers arrived, they spoke with Brian's mother, Terry, who explained that her son, being an inexperienced driver, had accidentally parked at an angle, causing the car to roll into the river. It seemed like a teenage mistake, and the officers, remaining polite, accepted the story. Brian himself claimed he had been at the boat ramp for some alone time, to relax and think, and that the situation just unfolded. Eventually, a towing company arrived and pulled the car from the river. However, during the process, officers noticed red stains on the back bumper, which looked suspiciously like blood. When they questioned Brian, he assured them he wasn't injured, and they released the car to the family, believing the incident was nothing more than an accident. The next day, Brian's father, Brian Cohey Sr., discovered a wallet in his son's car. It didn't belong to Brian, It belonged to a 69-year-old homeless man named Warren Barnes. Brian Sr., thinking it might have been left by someone involved in towing the car, contacted Warren's workplace. Meanwhile, Warren's friends and family were growing worried, as he hadn't shown up in his usual spots. Warren Barnes, although homeless, was a beloved figure in Grand Junction, Colorado. Known for his kindness, warmth, and love of reading, Warren was a familiar face in the community. He had spent the last 4 years working odd jobs, and people cherished him for his selflessness and gentle nature. Businesses in the city even put out chairs for Warren to sit and read, as he was regarded as a positive, quirky presence in their world. Though his life may have been unconventional, he lived peacefully and brought a quiet joy to those who knew him. In Grand Junction, Warren Barnes was known as the reading man. Passers-by often greeted him, asked what he was reading, and wished him well. He was beloved by the community for his gentle and kind nature. So when he disappeared in early March 2021, people grew concerned. Warren had never missed a day of work, and his absence was noticed by friends, co-workers, and local business owners who were used to seeing him daily. One such business owner, Monique Lananti, who owns Monique's Bridal and would set out a chair to read, was the first to report him missing. She had seen him the day before, and when he didn't show up the next day, she knew something was wrong. Adding to the mystery, Warren's wallet had also been found in Brian Cohey Jr.'s car after it was pulled from the Colorado River. The wallet was found in a location Warren would not typically visit, which deepened the concerns about his disappearance. People began to fear the worst, though no one could have anticipated the horrifying truth about what had happened to Warren. On March 1st, 2021, Brian's mother, Terry, began searching her son's room. After finding Warren's wallet in Brian's car and noticing blood on the back bumper, she felt something was terribly wrong. She knew her son had exhibited disturbing behaviors in the past, making her deeply uneasy. Still, she likely believed she might find evidence of a theft or a hit-and-run accident. Something bad, but not unthinkable. But what she was about to discover would shatter any remaining hope. As she searched Brian's room, Terry's worst fears were confirmed. What she found was far beyond what any mother could ever imagine. She wasn't just uncovering evidence of a troubled young man. She was unearthing the horrifying reality that her son was a predator, someone capable of monstrous acts. The discovery in that room revealed the truth about Brian Cohey Jr., a truth that no one, not even his own mother, was prepared for. As Brian Cohey Jr.'s mother, Terry, searched his room, she made a discovery far beyond her darkest fears. Hidden in his wardrobe was a plastic bag containing a decomposing human head. Stunned and horrified, she also found a second bag, but this time she stopped herself from opening it. The gravity of the situation had sunk in. She realized she was no longer just dealing with a troubled young man, but a horrifying crime. Her maternal instincts kicked in, and instead of investigating further, she did the only thing she could. She called 911 from the backyard, ensuring that Brian, who was out front, couldn't hear her. In that moment, Terry likely feared for her own safety. She understood that her son, who had committed such a gruesome act, might harm her to protect himself. On the emergency call, Terry struggled to convey the horror of what she'd found. In disbelief, she told the dispatcher she thought there was a human head in her son's room, explaining she had seen an ear. Overwhelmed, she admitted her son had always had a fascination with the morbid, which she had brushed off, thinking he was channeling it into a future career as a crime scene investigator. But now she realized she had misunderstood the depth of his obsession.
911 is John. What's the address emergency?
Hi, there is an emergency. I found something in my son's closet wrapped in a plastic bag.
Okay, what was it?
I think it's a human head.
It's a what?
I think it's a human head.
Why do you think it's that?
Because it looks like it's all an ear.
Is it bloody or does it like anything like that?
Can you just come? Do I have to take a picture and send it to you?
What's the address?
The dispatcher, trying to remain calm, asked if her son was home and whether he had any weapons. Terry revealed that Brian likely had a shotgun, adding another layer of fear to the already unimaginable situation. She mentioned she hadn't opened the second bag, leaving it in the kitchen sink covered with a towel.
Is your son there now?
He just pulled up. We wanted to make sure he was here before we called.
How old is he?
19. He's had a little bit of a fascination with the morbid, but he was channeling it, I thought, into becoming a crime scene investigator, but not so much.
Do you think he's going to be cooperative with us?
I don't know. I don't think he'll be violent. Just came back from his friend's house.
Does he have any weapons in his room, or do you guys have any in the house?
I don't know. I think that he has a shotgun, but we can certainly remove it immediately before he gets in his room. He's out by the car now, so.
Is the bag still in the closet?
No, it's in my kitchen sink. And there's a secondary bag that I have not opened. It's currently covered with a towel.
And there's a second bag?
Yeah, there's a second bag, though I don't know what's in it. I didn't open it.
I'm sorry. Did he took the second bag out of the closet?
I took the second bag out of the closet and put it in the sink.
Where's Brian now?
I think he's still outside.
And you're in the backyard now?
I am, yes, because I don't want him to hear me.
During the call, Terry was not just reporting a gruesome discovery, but also trying to make sense of the nightmare unfolding before her. She was attempting to reconcile the son she knew with the monster she now realized he had become. Brian's interest in death and crime had not been harmless. It had been a precursor to something far darker. His supposed interest in forensics and crime scenes had been a mask, hiding a long-harbored desire to commit a murder. What she once thought was a quirky interest was now revealed to be a murderous obsession. Brian hadn't been preparing for a career in crime investigation. He had been preparing for a kill. This realization left Terry shattered as the truth about her son became horrifyingly clear. When the police arrived, there was no dramatic confrontation. Instead, Brian's arrest played out in a disturbingly calm manner. Body cam footage shows officers approaching him and explaining that his parents had found something concerning in his room. Without hesitation, Brian admitted what they would find: a human head and hands. When asked why he did it, he simply said, "I always wondered what murder was like." His response was chillingly devoid of emotion.
Cooperate? I am going to cooperate.
Okay, so parents have some concerns of some stuff they may have found in your room?
Yeah, I believe so.
And what would it be?
A human head and hands.
Do you have anything on you that's gonna cut, poke, hurt, stick me anything without reaching for nothing? Don't reach for nothing.
My phone and my wallet, that's
okay.
it.
Well, I'm gonna have you face that way, put your hands on top of your head for me real quick. I just wanna make sure you interlace your fingers for me real quick, all right?
Brian's behavior during the arrest was without any remorse or fear, suggesting more than just a lack of social awareness. Some might speculate that his behavior stemmed from being on the autistic spectrum, but others, including experts, would argue that his reaction points more to psychopathy, a complete disconnect from the gravity of his actions, a lack of empathy, and an inability to understand fear or consequences like most people. Meanwhile, Terry was devastated, watching her son get arrested. Just days earlier, she had found a decomposing head in his room. Now she was grappling with the truth that her son was a murderer. Warren Barnes, the missing homeless man, was identified as the victim. It confirmed the community's worst fears. Warren would never again sit outside local businesses, reading and greeting passersby. Brian was taken into custody, and police began interviewing the Coe family. His father, who had found Warren's wallet and a knife in Brian's car earlier, confronted his son at the time. Brian had told his father that he found the wallet at the boat ramp, but his father had a deep sense that something was wrong. He just couldn't bring himself to believe that Brian was capable of such a gruesome crime. Terry, in her interview, recounted how she had been cleaning up her son's room, putting things away. She noticed a Rubbermaid container in his closet and started going through it, leading to the unimaginable discovery. The gruesome reality of her son's actions was unfolding, and nothing in her life would ever be the same. When Terry Coe found the plastic bag in her son Brian's room, something felt off. The bag was heavy and covered in maggots, so she took it to the sink. Upon opening the first layer, she saw blood. With a sense of dread, she opened the second layer and found something unimaginable: a human head. Overwhelmed, she didn't open the second bag. Instead of immediately calling the police, she reached out to Brian's father, asking him to come home right away. This instinctual need to share the burden with her husband delayed the inevitable call to authorities. Brian, who was at a friend's house, was tricked into returning home when his family said his brother needed the car. Once home, Brian was arrested. In the police interview, Brian shockingly admitted to the murder without hesitation. He explained that he had killed Warren Barnes, a homeless man, using a kitchen knife. When asked why, he replied that he had always wondered what murder felt like. What was more disturbing was the excitement in his voice as he detailed the crime. Brian went on to give a chillingly graphic account of the murder. He had been driving around, depressed and in a dark state of mind, when he spotted Barnes. With a full moon illuminating the night, Brian approached him. After engaging Barnes in conversation, he pulled out a knife and attacked, stabbing him in the neck. Brian described how easy it was to overpower the older man, saying, "I was barely breaking a sweat." He admitted to making growling, animalistic sounds during the attack, completely overtaken by a frenzied adrenaline rush.
This is him. I was straddled on top of him like this. Okay. And he couldn't fight back. It was actually surprisingly easy. I was barely breaking a sweat. I thought, oh, this guy, he's going to be tough. But no, it was actually surprisingly easy.
Brian's narration became even more gruesome as he explained how he dismembered the body. After killing Barnes, he stripped him of his clothes and cut open his belly to examine his guts. He then decapitated him, giving the head a Glasgow smile, or what is known as a Joker smile, by cutting from ear to ear. Brian even destroyed Barnes's eyes by stabbing them and attempted to cut off his arms. He placed the severed head and hands in Ziploc bags, hiding them in his room. After the murder, Brian meticulously cleaned up the scene. He washed the knife, threw away the bloodied garbage, and put his clothes, stained with blood splatter, in the washing machine on high speed to remove any traces. This entire confession was delivered with eerie calmness and an alarming lack of remorse. What should have been a horrifying moment for most was instead an exhilarating experience for Brian, as he relived every gruesome detail of the murder with fascination. Listening to Brian Coey's confession is nothing short of horrifying. His calm, almost excited behavior, as he nonchalantly describes the severe murder of Warren Barnes, is deeply unsettling. His excitement while talking to the officers, constantly smiling and even laughing at times, reveals a chilling lack of remorse. Coey had carefully planned the murder, assembling a kill kit that included a 12-inch kitchen knife, plastic gloves, and other materials like zip ties. Despite experiencing initial panic during the act, Coey pushed forward, repeatedly stabbing Barnes in the neck, unfazed by the victim's pleas for mercy. Warren Barnes, a beloved community member, was reduced to a target in Coey's twisted mind, chosen simply because Coey wanted to know what it felt like to kill. As Coey continued to describe the dismemberment, he gave bizarre details about seeing Barnes's guts, remarking on their pinkness, then laughing and apologizing for how gruesome it sounded. His casual manner in talking about cutting off Barnes's head, hands, and arms, and how he tried to hide the evidence, is deeply disturbing. The excitement in his voice as he relived the crime made it clear that this was not an impulsive act. It was something he had been thinking about for a long time. Coey admitted to police that he had been planning to kill someone for 6 months. He targeted a homeless man because, in his words, no one would miss him, showing a complete disregard for human life. He even considered killing a sex worker, thinking the same, that their disappearance wouldn't attract attention. His chilling detachment from the humanity of his potential victims made the crime even more devastating to comprehend. When investigators dug into Coey's past, they discovered disturbing internet searches, including phrases like homicidal thoughts every day and how deadly is a stab wound. He had also looked into how people react during home invasions and knife-point confrontations, showing a disturbing obsession with violence. In 2018, Coey had practiced killing on animals, admitting to strangling and decapitating a cat, which he kept for 3 days before disposing of it in the trash. Although this cat-killing incident was a well-known rumor in Grand Junction, those close to Coey dismissed it as just that, a rumor. His friends refused to believe he was capable of such cruelty, even when the warning signs were glaring. It's a stark reminder that people often overlook or deny the unsettling behaviors of those they know, even when the red flags are impossible to ignore. In the police interview, Brian Coey was asked if the murder had satisfied his curiosity, the dark urge he'd nurtured for so long. His response was chilling. Coey described the act as an adrenaline rush, His body was shaking, and there was undeniable excitement. Yet afterward, he didn't feel the way he had expected. The intensity faded, leaving him feeling neutral. He didn't love or hate what he'd done, but upon reflection, Cohey claimed that he wouldn't have done it again, not because of any regret, but likely because the murder hadn't provided the lasting satisfaction he'd imagined. Cohey also admitted to taking pictures of Warren Barnes's mutilated body, though he later deleted them in an attempt to cover his tracks. The police, however, were able to recover the images, providing further evidence of Cohey's gruesome thrill in the murder. Disturbingly, he had written first in his phone notes the night of the murder, hinting at his intentions to kill again. He had even planned to keep one of Barnes's fingers as a memento to relive the experience over and over again. This is a hallmark of serial killer mentality, a desire to savor the crime beyond the act itself. On the night of the murder, Cohey had tried to dispose of Barnes's body by driving to the Colorado River. He placed the dismembered body parts in the trunk of his car, intending to dump them into the river. However, after discarding the remains, Cohey's car rolled into the river, getting stuck, which explained why the vehicle had blood traces. When questioned, Cohey directed the police to the exact location where they would find some of Barnes's remains, including his arms. Unfortunately, much of the body had been swept away by the river.
This your son right here? Yep. Hey, partner, you want to come out and talk to me real quick?
Sure,
Appreciate it, man.
I'm really cold. Is it okay if it's in here? Because
That's fine.
Because he had
Okay, that's fine. I did not know that. No, please stay in the car.
Yeah.
All right. Nobody else in the car?
Nope.
No,
Okay.
no, just us. I'm the father, that's the mother, and this is our son. He just
Sounds
called us 20
good.
minutes ago and said, Dad, I parked at the boat ramp and I messed up. I tried to get out of the car and it slid down.
Well, you're not hurt, right? You're okay?
No, just a little cold is all.
Just beside your pride a little bit.
And probably $7,000.
Okay. All right, man. Do you have your ID with you, driver's license by any chance?
Thankfully.
What were you doing down here, bud?
Well, I felt like I needed to get out, and I figured, why not park here and just
relax a little bit?
Relax and think.
Okay.
And I parked on the boat ramp, and I thought it would be easy to get out. But when I tried to,
Where did you park exactly? Were you down the hill a little bit?
Yeah, just a little bit.
Okay.
And then
When he got back in, go ahead.
when I got back in, I tried to put it in drive, and it didn't go up. So then I tried putting it in low gear, shimmying it a bit. That didn't work.
Were you facing down?
No,
at
I
this
was
point, or were
facing.
you
I was
facing
facing
this way?
up.
You back down?
Yeah.
That's a really good idea.
As the case gained attention, those who had known Cohey, including former teachers, expressed little surprise at the revelations. Many of his teachers had felt uneasy around him, noting his disturbing behavior. They believed the school system had failed him by not providing adequate intervention when red flags were raised about his behavior. While some believed Cohey's path could have been altered with proper intervention, others saw him as someone who was always destined to become a predator. During the trial, which lasted 12 days, Cohey pled not guilty by reason of insanity. His defense argued that his diagnosed mental health disorders contributed to his inability to understand his actions. However, for many, the meticulous planning, the thrill in recounting the murder, and the cold lack of remorse painted the picture of someone who was born to kill. Despite his claims of a psychotic episode triggered by seeing Barnes, 2 state psychologists declared him sane, noting that he clearly understood the consequences of his actions. Cohey's defense leaned on his diagnosed mental health issues, including ADHD and depression. Maintaining these combined with environmental stressors made him insane. However, testimonies from his family doctor and therapist, B. Phillips, indicated that Cohey had not shown signs of psychosis or tendencies leading up to the murder. In therapy, he had discussed predatory behavior and admitted to bullying others intentionally, demonstrating an awareness of right and wrong, but choosing to disregard moral boundaries. Ultimately, his actions reflect not a momentary insanity, but a deeply rooted antisocial personality, highlighting the disturbing reality of someone who knowingly operates outside norms. During a court assessment in 2019, Brian Cohey Jr.'s mother, Terry, expressed concern over his inability to understand how his choices impacted his future and those around him. This lack of awareness led to a diagnosis of level 1 autism by Dr. Katrina Catton. When asked about his role models, Cohey shockingly named notorious figures like Adolf Hitler, Joseph Stalin, in serial killer Ted Bundy, indicating a disturbing fascination with individuals known for their destructive legacies. Such responses prompted Dr. Catton to recommend immediate further evaluation, highlighting the dangerous mindset Cohey exhibited. In the weeks leading up to his arrest, a coworker observed Cohey becoming increasingly talkative, suggesting a growing fixation on violence. When she attempted to reach out, he dismissed her kindness as mere pity, revealing his deep-seated feelings of isolation. Ultimately, the jury deliberated for only 2 days before finding Cohey guilty of first-degree murder, rejecting the insanity defense. They concluded that he clearly understood right from wrong, also convicting him of tampering with a deceased body and evidence. As the verdict was read, Cohey showed no emotion, very different with the emotional relief of those present, who sought justice for the severe murder of a kind-hearted man at the hands of someone who derived pleasure from violence. At sentencing, Brian Cohey Jr. received a life sentence without parole, a necessary measure to protect society from individuals with such a predatory mindset. Judge Richard Gurley, who has 37 years of experience in the criminal justice system, labeled the case as one of the most horrific he had encountered, acknowledging Cohey's mental issues while declaring his understanding of right and wrong. The impact on Cohey's family was extreme. His mother, Terry, expressed deep sympathies for the victim, Warren Barnes, and acknowledged the toll it had taken on their family. Warren's sister and niece spoke of their grief, emphasizing the community's love for Warren and their hope that Cohey would never harm another person. Cohey is now serving his sentence at the Buena Vista Correctional Complex, where he will have time to reflect on his actions. One can only hope that his neutral feelings after the murder might likely turn into regret. The case resonated deeply with the Grand Junction community, leading to a memorial for Warren that symbolizes his worth, a value that Cohey failed to recognize when he chose his victim. In the end, Warren's tragic death serves as a reminder of the value that lies within every human existence, regardless of social classification. It raises questions about the nature of evil and whether individuals like Cohey are born or shaped into who they are. What do you think? Nature, nurture, or something else? Leave your thoughts in the comments section below, and don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. Thank you for watching. We'll see you guys soon.